Hello, everybody, and welcome back to RCI's TV's presentation of the Friday Endurance Championship in its second season. And today, the finale, the final round, live here from Donington Park in England. The Pro and the High Silver Split brought to you for one last time by all of us here on the staff. Hello, everybody. I'm Jesse Lee, joined by Ryan Mawson and Stewie in the booth, bringing you all the depictions and descriptions of all the action here today. Ryan Mawson, nice of you to join us for the finale today. And rather unfortunately, I don't have a nice championship battle to give you.
No, we don't. But having seen some of the racing this season, it don't matter what championship battles may be said, done and dusted. All these drivers are still going to be fighting for any position they can get. And yes, welcome to an extremely wet Donington. Anyone who lives in the Great British Isles will know that this week has been absolutely miserable with the weather. So this is rather fitting for these drivers. Donington is sort of vaguely close to where I live, and yeah, this amount of precipitation is key, and I think we're going to see some mistakes like that through the race. These painted curbs here, they take no prisoners.
No, they're not. And if you were at Donington a weekend ago, I was told by several people that were that it was doing this Saturday morning. So a little bit too true to life. And we are away with practice, the end of practice. And more importantly than anything, Mawson, when you get a wet weather practice like this, or wet weather racing, it's important to get out there and get as many laps as you can, because it's not something you get every race or every day. So any kind of practice is valuable, almost at a premium, so to speak, in these weather conditions. And nearly everybody out there on the track getting some laps in, queuing it in just in case whenever we do click over to the race, it is this exact condition. There's always that chance it won't be. But if it is, it's very important that you are ready for whatever comes.
Absolutely, and you must check the wet setups. You know, you've changed the car entirely for this. You've got to check it on the full race fuel, and it's beneficial to keep going round in these practice scenarios. You can see that there is slowly a dry line forming. Now, it will not dry up with this kind of rain that we've got coming down. It will stay, pretty heavy throughout, I think, if we're looking at the current forecast. But cars change over that. There's certain cars that they start to actually overheat the wets on the drier line. As a driver, you must know this. You'll see sometimes, drivers dipping off the line into the wets to cool them back down again, or it now plays into your tire strategy. You can have wet tire strategies in a wet race where a lot of people just think it's, about staying out of the wall. We've seen it before where if people manage to really look after their wets in a long, long race, which is, this is the 2 hour special, you can really gain time on people for those who burn them up in the first 15 minutes and then they're struggling really, really badly in the wet.
There's always going to be that strategy, and this track not known for the most grip in the world either. And you add to that that it's very wet, a lot of changing variables. Well, the championships in pro and high silver, they're not done and dusted. It is a big old ask to get the second place car anywhere near the top, but it's not impossible. And on a day like today, this is a classic sort of trap race where you come into the end of the season, you've got a big lead, maybe you relax a little bit, maybe the weather throws you off, and then all of a sudden things are a lot tighter than they should be. I mean, just a few races ago, I thought this championship was being put to bed and it was opened back up again, but even still, you've got to go out there. You've got to compete for 2 hours. You have to get your bucket full of points. And that will certainly be harder today with the weather conditions. Some of the cars seem to be struggling. You wouldn't normally see Svinček in the 107, or even this man, Martin Lawrence, so far back. But here we are in this scenario. I would consider this very wet.
Yeah, this is quite a moderate downpour, I think that we would say in England. And some of the cars do not really, they don't deal well at Donington. Obviously, this is from the British GT. We run British GT BOP, and because of that, a lot of the cars that drivers are maybe used to how they handle throughout the entire season. You come to Donington, for example, I know for a fact the Bentley runs quite a lot of ballast. So the car that you've had this nice, light, nimble sort of car has suddenly become weighted down with a lot, a lot heavier ballast to contend with. But other cars, they really, really thrive on it. The Porsche, once again, sort of continuing its charge forward, they really love it here. And the wet weather, I think, it will benefit the Porsches a little bit more in this case if you can keep them on the road because that rear engine, you have great rear traction coming out of these corners. And a lot of times at Donington, you can't really carry super speed through the corners unless you count maybe old hairpin. But coming onto corners like this, the back straight, if you can get that drive down, you will really start to freight train some people.
That is music to Robin Baugh's ears as qualifying opens up here. 15-minute session. Everybody out on the track at the same time. And it is confirmed a very wet racetrack. Most of the progress that was made during the practice session with the less wet line, I refrain from calling it a dry line like you did as well, but a less wet line, a ran in line, if you will. And Robin Bob will have the very first crack at it. And as you said, Porsche might have the best shot as we go on the helmet cam here for lap one. And this track will race almost identical to the way that it does in the drive, basically because you don't really have much of a choice in the apex through the turn one section. And now going down the hill, it's like almost hitting an elevator, the sharp left-hand turn. You have to be very careful here, having to correct as now the right up the hill again. Going to be very careful about these corners today and these curbs because it will send you off the track. Robin Baugh doing exactly that, losing traction, a little less grip than he would have liked, certainly going off the circuit. Didn't look like that invalidated the time. A little bit of counter-corrective steering at the top of the hill after we end up at the top. And by the way, now we are at the top of the hill. A blind right-hander followed by what is normally a flat-out or nearly flat-out right-hander, but in these weather conditions, I highly doubt they're going to be doing this. The ever-present and very tricky chicane, including in the wet, navigated just about as good as you could have possibly wanted to get through there. Look for that to be a problem area, as will be the hairpin. As usually you try to get as close to the apex as possible, though it's not necessarily required. In the rain, it might actually be a little bit more beneficial to get as close to the curb as possible. Final turn here, back onto the front straight. That looked like a okay lap, I would say, Mawson, a fairly wayward one, but it comes in at a 1:32.445, room to improve.
Oh yeah, we saw it in practice that we were down into the 131s. I don't think we're going to get much lower as Robin Barr has to save the car there. That notorious turn one. What you want to put the power down there. Turn one is a lot wider than you maybe think. It's Redgate. You want to put the power on, but you must restrain your foot. Your brain's wanting you to slam it to get that lap time, but as we saw there, easily done. That will throw it off the course. So far, it's actually now been knocked off the top by Mikowski at 32.226. I think the times will continue to drop, though, as that slightly more run-in line starts to appear.
Yeah, a couple of places to watch out for today. Turn four, where Robin Baugh went off. That's old hairpin. Of course, the S's, as I refer to it, as the chicane. And you've got the Melbourne hairpin, which I believe it's still called that. And then Goddard's, of course, seen several cars backwards in that corner as well. And like you said, Redgate, turn one, don't look too far beyond that, as a lot of times desperate moves down into turn one ends in contact as well. Pretty much every other corner here, I think they're Craner, Curve, McLean's, and Coppice. You're really your own worst enemy in those corners, aren't you? But car-to-car contact, certainly an old hairpin, certainly in the S's, and certainly in Melbourne hairpin.
Coppice is probably one of the corner that I struggle the most with in a lot of cars. It's even in the dry, the longs, it's basically a double right-hander, blind and over the crest. A lot of cars really struggle to get the power down. And if you're in a mid-engine car, some of the McLarens that we see in this field, you put your foot down hard and it really wants to snap on you. Some of the front-engine cars survive a little bit better, but for certain cars, Bentley, for example, they'll spin up the rear wheels and then you got a really oversteery situation as well. It is so hard to get, a perfect line out of Coppice, but if you do, you can just watch that delta climb and climb and climb. It's really nice when you get it. And you mentioned this man was not doing so well in the practice. Well, he's
Hmm.
picked up his game as Martin Lawrence.
I think he was playing a bit of possum, Ryan, if I'm completely honest with you. Certainly was down in about ninth or so place, but now with that lap, a 32:103 goes all the way up to second, just a quarter of a second off of Mikowski's time. And that's more like it for the connection lost team. And Martin Lawrence, as Robin Boss still seems to be struggling there with the turn in, the turn off, and just seems a bit not in the road at all. It seems to be sort of floating around and getting loose on them. And you go, well, of course that is, Jesse. It's in the wet. But you look at some of the other cars; they're not having that struggle on. But how good could this lap be? Gets a good exit there. And could this be something good? And in fact, it is a 31.971 for Robin Baugh in the Danglin Wang team, 1/10 off of Mikowski's time, and that's a lot better. Maybe it's just because they're pressing extra hard. Maybe that's why it looks like this. And this is the driver I was looking at for turn one. This is Grant Willemont in the 100. Practice was dominated by the 185. But qualifying going the way of Grant Willemont and continues to do so at a 31.950. That's incredible from a high silver driver.
Yeah, really showing that Grant Willemot, he's mastered the Porsche and mastered these wet conditions. Some drivers, that's what I like really about a lot of the rain racing. You see these drivers who maybe are, they are not the absolute best in the dry, but some people really can click with the wet conditions and how to drive their car. And I think the Porsches, yeah, they're really having a field day. But here comes Martin Lawrence once again. He's getting ever so close to that time from Mikowski, a barely 15 hundredths off. I think that 627 now is going to feel the 404 breathing down their neck and are going to want to improve. And speaking of improvement, Svenchek improves a little bit again.
You talk about improvement. I think this racetrack's improving. We kind of figured it would, but it's improving by leaps and bounds. Mikowski had that really quick lap out there and is still the carrot in front of the pig, will still only by 15/100ths of a second. Everybody closing in and getting quicker all the time. That's a lot of things, folks, as Korshaven goes to fifth place with a 32.001. We'll just call it a 32 dead just for funsies. But everyone getting a bit quicker, and that has to do with the track. You can see the line on some of these straightaways. It's less of a sheen and it's more of a matte color. That's indicative of water still being on the track, obviously, but no standing water. Realistically, the track's just wet, and that certainly helps the times. It heats up the tires as well. It's so hard as Mikowski's going to come across the line and not improve. That was invalidated, that one. And oh, that was an outlap indeed. It was a 3-minute 26 there. So that was the outlap for Mikowski, as Mikowski has been beat. Martin Lawrence on a tear. That's 4 consecutive fast laps for Martin Lawrence. And instead of green this time, he's gone purple.
Well, there you go. The Mercedes kind of historically does take quite a few laps to warm up, even in the dry. I've talked to certain Mercedes drivers before where they always complain that the tires take a long time to come up to temperatures and up to pressures to get that car fully on song, and I don't think that the wet would help it at all. So the 404 now on a bit of a charge and is back into the pits. Possibly take maybe some fresh wet tires and continue again. Got 5 minutes 30 left on the clock, so you wouldn't think that's a long time, but with the laps being so short around Donington, you can actually pound in quite a few laps before you have to pull in, as it were.
Yeah, my only concern is the heat in the tires. I was going to say before Martin Lawrence reset quick lap was that it's so hard here in ACC to get heat in the tires whenever it's raining that you end up running 4 or 5 laps just to get a little bit of temperature to try to get temp in the tires, and then you improve all along the way. I think that's what we're seeing, that with the track improving as well. What can Mikowski do? And that lap will be about a 10th slower, actually only about half a 10th slower than his fastest lap. So Martin Lawrence still the fastest on the track by a little over a quarter of a second. Nobody else really close. Grant Willemont, the next closest. He's the high silver leader right now. Keller is second and Rossi is third, but Robin Baugh has got it together again. And that a 31.845 for Robin Baugh improves to second place and is about a quarter of a second off himself and only 9 1 thousandths in front of Mikowski now, as all the Porsches now they're matriculating to the top a little bit.
So far, and it's the only one that the Porsche that is yet to set that blinder is Sam Smeets, still going around, but this lap he is actually up on his delta in the green, lost a little bit coming down that back straight, but a lot of the times a lot of drivers really find it gains time in the S's if you can get a nice smooth exit. You don't necessarily, the S's is kind of a kind of a tricky corner. You don't want to just throw the car in, as Houston, we have liftoff, and there we go. You don't want to throw the car in too hard because you'll be all out of shape for the exit, and it makes it really, really difficult to get that run down into the Melbourne hairpin. Sometimes I've found, at least personal experience, taking the S's really nice, slow and controlled, and then going for the the mad dash up into the Melbourne hairpin. That really helps, and that was a much better one for Sam Smeets. Second place in his silver class. So it's Porsche and Mercedes Porsche for the pro.
There is an airport right close to Donington Park, I assure you, but I'm not sure liftoff is permitted on the racing circuit, especially going down to the Melbourne hairpin. I'm not sure they will appreciate that very much. So maybe getting a aviation warning perhaps is Sim Schmeets, even though they don't have a pilot's license here today. Grant Willemont continues to impress in high silver. They could very well see themselves in the Turn 1 team promoted to pro next season. Ryan Mawson, your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean, Grant, we've seen some great things from that driver, as he says, and a lot of times with RCI, we've classed them as what their consistency is. But every single time you see Grant Willemot, he's up there now in that Porsche. He's really got to grips with it. So I'd say that, yeah, he would definitely make quite a good, front runner in the pro class. I'll be definitely looking forward to seeing that next season. Anyway.
I could see the 95 of Smeets and the 185 with Rossi and them as well being promoted into the pro class for the next endurance championship. Of course, RCI keeps track of all these things behind the scenes, where teams are finishing, and promotions are sometimes mandated, but also given and in certain cases requested by teams as well. And certainly, if you've been with us for a long time, you'll have noticed in certain championships, certain drivers' teams were auto promoted based on how much of a thrashing they were giving their own class, and that's simply just in the spirit of competitiveness. But of course, next season on Friday, not an endurance championship, so it is back to the normal Friday championship, the Friday Cup, as it were. Racing takes a little bit of a break on Fridays, but season two's been interesting. We've had our shares of drama, and it's going to go down here at the end. And right there, you can see just how different the racetrack is. When we came in, the entire racetrack was shiny, and now there is very clearly, Ryan Moss, a line that you can run on. And actually, I'm assuming the grip is actually not too bad on these wet tires.
Yeah, it does look like it, and as he says, that is really starting to become much more of a matte finish. You see the drivers really wanting to go for that line. It will be interesting to see what will happen over a whole race, because we're at 27 degrees C track temperature, which is in the rain. That is quite high. So as much as the dry line is really helping you, pounding around for lap after lap under 2 hours, you might see some of the drivers trying to dip off that dry line and give their tires a bit of a cooling. It all really depends on the setup that car is running. What kind of suspension geometry have you got? Is it going to superheat the tires? And what brake ducts are you running? Donington wouldn't think of it as a heavy braking circuit, but such places like this Melbourne Loop, you're hard on the brakes at least twice, within quick succession. The brakes do get, quite a pounding round here. And as the checkered flag finishes, all flying laps left to run will be counted. Robin Baugh will finish and go no higher than fourth.
I'm surprised by the 185. They were so good in practice. I expected a little bit more. Nicholas Keller thinks that they have a little something extra, but do not end up being a tenth slower than their fastest lap. They will go no higher. Well, Mikowski ended up jumping Grant Willemont in the starting order, half a tenth off of Martin Lawrence, who's looking like your pole sitter for the day. But what can Grant Willemont do? They're hustling that Porsche around here.
Yeah, they're trying to squeeze any last bit that they've possibly got on that. It's basically now or never. It's the optimum conditions for the track. No one in front of you. It's the last do or die. And sometimes that can really put the pressure on a driver. And we've seen it where they go.
Oh, speaking
It,
of,
I think that I don't know. Was that an invalid lap? I think it was. They have dropped off my timing screen. I think that was maybe just a hair's width too wide.
had to go for it. Didn't have anything really to lose. Already qualified third, second row. The only thing they had to gain was, well, one additional row. So you had to go for it. Going for it was Willemont and just running out of space. And that's not only going to happen in qualifying, folks. As quali ends, the results confirmed. Martin Lawrence on pole. Mikowski is the front row. Willemont and Baugh, the second row. Smeets, Koroshaven, then Jarzabowski, Melbourne, Frozen, Keller, your top 10. Rossi, Hopner, Svenchek, and Geisler are your remaining starters. Of course, we didn't start this championship with 14 teams. We started this championship with quite a lot of teams, but well, unfortunately, a lot of them have either withdrawn or been withdrawn due to, well, driver infractions, let's say.
Yes, you can never escape the steward's eye. And they will. They're still here. Last race of the season. I'm sure they'll be wanting a bit of a break. I'm sure, but RCI and it is a wet Donington, and that is where I'm going to leave it for now.
Well, as we get ready for the race, let's take a look at your championship points going into the final round. Team Ballas Ukraine have been running roughshod throughout this lineup and absolutely getting it done. 378 points. Volante Racing in the 70. Bentley is second. They're 30 points out. Keep in mind, it's 65 points for a win. And that's only halfway up the field. So if the 141 has a really bad day, which they have done in this championship, it could fall into the lap of the number 70, but it is ever so big of an ask to have. Third place, Front Left Tire Scrubbers Esports at 268. Can't contest the championship today, but they will be settled on defending from Dang Lin Wang, who looked very racy in practice and qualifying at 236 points. Rounding out the top five, the 501 of Forza Italia PL Esports team at 214 points. Then there's the Porsche Spinala team in the 199 at 208. Green Lofus Engineering in the 107, who didn't quite have the qualifying today that they wanted, but only a handful of points behind the number 6 team. Excel Racing by Renwelt and Orange, which is actually just now Renwelt and Esports in the 71, has 190 points and 6 behind them. Like and subscribe in the 911. And rounding out the top 10 in the 837, Boatley Maritime Services Racing. You're definitely going to need the Maritime Services today on 177 points. Some of these teams, of course, not here today. And as we go to the second standings, we will take a look at the back half of the pro field. A lot of these teams not taking part in the championship anymore. Connection Lost Racing is in the 404 and could see themselves with a decent result today inside the top 10. Of course, running down the order, take a look, pick out your favorite team. Hope they're still on the track. And these are the drivers that, or the teams rather, that have fallen out quite early in the championship. Moving on to High Silver, it is the same song, different verse. Balasso Squadra Corsa with 421 points leads the High Speed Ninjas in the 95. That's 34 points, unless my maths is letting me down. And again, same conversation as before. Still possible. It will take a very big ask. I think it would take Balasso Squadra not finishing the race with how little high silver entries we have for high speed ninjas to win. And a little bit out of the order and not competing for the top two spots is the number 100 Turn 1 Pro Am team, who looks really strong here today, looking to do some defending and maybe a little bit of offense considering their qualifying prowess today with 305 points. AOSP in the 722 on 224. The 271 Team Volmont by Prime Motorsports at 214 points, 10 points out of the top four. Turn 1 Honda Pro Am in the 102 has 202. TSE Board Dads in the 166 of 178. Turn 1 Silver in the 101, which I don't think is here today with 160. Goes Toblerone in the 197 at 146. And Volante Racing Academy and their AMR Vantage in the number 3 with 85 points. As we mentioned, there are less high silver than there are pro. We talked about all season how strange that actually is. And these are the teams that haven't made it to the finale. Well, it's not quite the game 7, the football final that you want between 2 teams that hate each other, Ryan Mawson. It is a very wet day, and it's not the easiest task if you're second in either category to come back today. I think the only thing you can do if you're chasing that championship, if you still have a shot, the only thing you can do is keep hope alive and keep the car on the track.
Absolutely. It's always a race of attrition, especially in the wet. Anything can happen. As you says, some of these drivers are coming in, just running around for the last season, or can't really let your guard down for any of it, for any of these teams. And well, for one team, it's already gone a little bit pear-shaped. The 627, who was our second place, has disconnected from the. They have actually rejoined though, so they will be allowed to start the race, but they will be from the back of the grid. So 627, they've got even more work to do.
We've had a couple of cars not be able to hang on to connection here. And of course, the way that RCI works is you are allowed to reconnect on the grid, but as Ryan Mawson said, you will start from the back because it technically scores you as missing the grid. So, and that's different than if you do a qualifying run, you disconnect and qualifying and reconnect, you actually get to keep that spot because the server will save your time. That's not so on the Parc Ferme grid, unfortunately. So a couple of cars feeling like it's already raining on them today.
Yeah, when some teams say that that black rain cloud has been following them around all season, well, today it has quite literally followed you. And with the look of those clouds, I don't think we're gonna have any chance of sunlight. I think to coin a local phrase, I don't really like them clouds.
Well, the grid is on their formation lap here under safety car rules. And let's just talk about our pole sitter for a second. The 404 Connection Lost Racing, they have had a dismal championship series. They've had 7 races with us, or 6 races. Today would be the 7th. They've had 1 sign out, but even in the 6 races that they were here for, no podiums, no wins. It's been just a bit dismal for the 404.
Yeah, and like I say, it's such a shame sometimes because the team, they provide us with some great racing. Like at Hungaroring, they were, really on it, but something happens to them or car maybe not exactly to their liking. It does seem to work at Donington today, which is, not a car that I would have ever. If you asked me to pick a car that would, do well at Donington in the wet, I think Mercedes AMG would have been literally right down on the bottom of the list. It would have been the last car I would have ever considered seeing on the podium position. The 404 have got to grips with it and flying along. We'll see what their car does in a race pace, though, because obviously one thing to qualify, but your car can completely change its tune as soon as you load it up with heavy race fuel.
So how do we grid up here? Certainly there will be an empty spot for second place, right? Because the second place car is now at the back of the grid. Grant Willemont does not get that second place spot. He has to start behind Martin Lawrence still, doesn't he?
I think so. It might adjust the grids though. It sometimes puts, it shuffles up. I think it depends on how many people have lost connection or what the game deems. I've seen it where, yeah, there has just been grid gaps, or I've seen it where I've suddenly gained a place from someone who's done. And here we go. Well, we're lining up. It looks like Grant Willemot will
He's
start from
definitely lining
behind.
up beside him.
Oh, here
Oh,
we go.
he's
There's
definitely beside him now. Oh wait, yeah, he is. So maybe it has adjusted. I'm used to it not doing that, but I've heard it does this on occasion. Oh no, he is lining up behind him. Okay, so it would appear as if. Oh, okay.
There you
So a
go.
little bit of confusion here. Sometimes ACC does move up the grid to keep there from being empty spots. Sometimes it doesn't. On this occasion, it certainly has. So your front row will be Martin Lawrence and what is not Grant Willemont. It is Rins Crozen in the Deng Lin Wang 8 car. Oh, excuse me. We're looking at third. That is indeed Grant Willemont in the 100 and Martin Lawrence on the front row as we are green in very wet conditions running down towards Red Gate for the very first time. Peeking to the outside is Willemont, can't do it. Peeking to the inside is the 8. The 8 challenging for the lead. They go single file. Willemont slides into third, comes across the nose of the fourth place car. They're still side by side behind. Oh,
We've got a
Svenchek's
car off
off.
in the S's. It's the 107. That's the Sven. In fact, no, that's not the 107. Svenchek is still there. That was the. Which Bentley was that?
That had to have been Svenchek. That had to have been the 107. He's the only white and silver Bentley in the field.
No, Svenchek is still in 11th place. He is that grey Bentley. We had another. Which one was it? It's the
Oh, that was
627.
Mikowski. That was Mikowski. All right. So Mikowski got touched there by the McLaren, sent him onto the wet grass. One tire on the grass is actually worse than having them all on the grass, if you can believe that, because you have one wheel spinning independently quicker than any other tire. When you get back on the surface or the racing surface, you lose all traction. So completely off. Oh, and spun out of the middle. Is that Keller?
That is
It is.
271 of Keller. Was this just a bit too much chicane? Yeah, you can see the back end of the car twitch, and the poor white Bentley has just nowhere to go. You take so
Yeah.
much curb on the inside at the start of the race. The curbs are still soaking wet. There is absolutely no traction over there. We've seen that crash happen, almost the exact same crash happen a couple of times, including, in fact, in the World Tour, I ended up doing the exact same thing to one of the Lamborghinis. Just as a driver, there's nothing you can do once that happens in front of you.
Mikowski qualified in the second place, trying to make their way up through the field. This is Juraj Svinček. I thought this was the car that went off. It's silver as well, but no such problems for the 107. In fact, a door ding there. Mikowski trying to get through. Everybody searching for grip. Everybody searching for space. With the weather, we haven't even really talked about this track. It's a lovely track to drive around. It is a pain to have to race somebody on. There are a couple of places you can get around, and I find here more than almost any other track in ACC, your car's natural ability is tested here. And certainly it becomes sort of a game of where is my car better than somebody else's, because you're just not given too many opportunities. Tight corners and not a whole lot of argument on how to get around them, as there's really only one correct line. You just have to take your opportunities where they may. And a little bit of a check up here. Hofner, Svinček, Mikowski, and Smeets now looming large in the background.
And the other thing as well that we can't see that's tested even more today is the driver's ability. Our broadcast cameras don't pick it up, but the spray, when these drivers are following that close to each other, will just be absolutely immense. Mikowski around the outside, it will give him the inside for Goddard's, the last corner. And there's another bit of a ding there, a bit of a, this is my racetrack, sunshine, and I've got a bigger fish to fry. Mikowski on the charges, Smeets coming up the inside of, that is the 107 of Svenchek again, but can he hang it all the way around the outside? It is a long old way. The Porsche is probably the only car that can do it. Another bit of a touch and he's run out of road.
Oh boy, that's ever so dangerous for Smeets there. Good job keeping it together. That is not easy to do. Mikowski back into the top 10, qualified second, disconnected, and upon reconnecting, had to start at the back of the grid, but has made good time, making up just about 4 spots. This is Tobias Hofner in front of him in the 197 high silver car, getting to the inside after a little slide from the 197. This is going to be done and dusted. Another place for Mikowski into 9th place. I feel like the 197 kind of let that happen a little bit, but also that was excellent pressure from Mikowski.
There's also probably quite a lot of drivers who've realised that Mikowski is maybe not their battle, and in a 2-hour race, it can sometimes just be the greater good to let the driver by, and you'll continue your own race in the rain as well. You don't really want to be having to, fight and battle and go offline, use curbs, because all of that just gives you a higher risk of, your race ending in tears.
I've just noticed something as well looking down at the RCI stewards box. There's almost as many stewards as there are racing cars today. So I think for the very first time in history, they are covered for stewards today here in the finale, hoping that they don't have too much of a workload here today. But we shall see. Darren Mulholland for front left tire scrubber esports in the middle of this pack, trying to hunt down Jarzabowski in the 501 Ferrari. I wouldn't peg a Ferrari being too good around here in general, but especially in the rain.
Yeah, the Ferrari's a weird swings and roundabouts car. It's what a lot of people gravitate towards when you want a mid-engine car that is very reliable. But yeah, there are just some tracks where it can't use full potential, or driving style is so strange that you really have to drive it weird. I mean, you put someone like Kevin Scolari behind the wheel, maybe, but how some of these pro drivers manage to drive these cars is beyond me. And speaking of the pro and the silvers, looking out of the windscreen of the Grant Willemont Porsche, double Porsche, once again you've got basically your fellow man in the same machinery, so it's now testing yourself even more because you have no advantage over over the driver in front of you at all. No braking, no speed, and no handling differences. It is setup and how much confidence you have in the car.
This is an excellent representation of what the drivers are looking at and what they're dealing with. Thanks, Stewie, to stay with this camera for just a moment. Take a look at just how much rain there is. And not only that, you're trying to get one up on the guy who jumped you in line. It was an excellent start from Rins Krozen in the 8 Porsche. That's the black and green one that we're looking at here. Stuck their nose into Red Gate on the inside when Willemont was thinking about going to the outside of Martin Lawrence and just got that position away. What an opportunity Rins was afforded there and took full advantage of it. But it looks like Willemont at this stage maybe has a little bit more pace in his 100. That's who we ride on board with here. And the spray, it's a lot to take in, isn't it? It's a beautiful sort of thing for us to watch. But as a driver, it's a bit hairy, isn't it?
Your mind's also, you've got to be so focused and switched on driving that Porsche in the wet as well, depending on how you've got that car set up. If you have it set up for a more aggressive and more pointy driving style, you can be rewarded with great lap times, but sometimes the risk, of that car, we've seen a couple of people struggle in it. I know it's a car that I definitely don't gravitate towards, but drivers who can get on with it are just, something else with when you see them catch these micro slides. You think, how have you even managed to do that? And a bit of flashing from the 100 they really want. They're saying, come on, I can have this back. I want to get by. But as you said earlier, Donington circuit, where do you really pass?
You pass when the opportunity is afforded to you. That's all you can do. And we're going to take a look at a replay. Darren Mulholland here. This is going down into the chicane. You know how this is going to go. Argument over space. Both cars going completely off. The Aston Martin will say, thank you very much.
Aston Martin became the better of that crash. So that's the Rossi team, the 185 up into second silver and 6th on the road, being chased down by Mikowski, who once again is just on the absolute charge from the back of the pack. They've already made their way back up to 7th. We've not even cracked 10 minutes yet, ladies and gentlemen.
It feels like we've been out here for 30 minutes. That was Mulholland and Hofner, by the way, going at it. And Rossi, who was third at the time, ended up second. And like you said, gained a bunch of places. Speaking of gaining a bunch of places, this is the splitter of Krzysztof Mikowski for Carbon Sim Sports, working on Rossi for the 6th place position now. Looks like he's going to go down to the inside and have it. This is breakneck pace. And I wonder, the closer that Mikowski gets to the top 5, how much slower is that progress going to be? But that's half the grid, more than half the grid now that Mikowski has made up. And like you said, less than 10 minutes. That's excellent progress.
Yeah, well, the 404, the only real gap that we've got is the distance between the 404 and the 8. The Martin Lawrence car has managed to really, scuttle themselves away at just about 3 seconds. So there's a little bit. And speaking of gaps that will form, that really won't help the 627's monumental charge.
No, it sure won't. No further action for an incident with the 197 and the 271. 5-second penalty for car 627. That's Mikowski's car. Drifts across into the 837. Overtake with contact, spinning the 837. Oh, the spin by the 837 is unfortunate due to one wheel clipping the grass. So 5 seconds, not for spinning a car because they deem that incidental due to the weather conditions. The 5-second penalty was for overtake with contact, just for context. And again, we do thank our stewards for explaining things to us in the box. And a racing incident between the 107 and the 627, that spin check, and of course Mikowski. So 5 seconds for Mikowski there. Not what they would have wanted, but shoot, if they've made up 15 seconds so far from the back of the grid to now, I don't think it's going to bother them too much in a 2-hour race.
No, in a 2-hour race, you can, and then we're getting a quick replay of, say, the incident that caused the penalty. You can see that's Mikowski's McLaren. Actually, I think this is a separate contact. We might be back with you, ladies and gentlemen, with that. But in a 2-hour race, you can afford to have, these small penalties here and there. You don't really want to be amassing them, though, like a game of bingo. It will start to hurt your race eventually. But you can, they've had the slap on the wrist and been told, drive a bit more careful, lads, and you can say, right, that's fine, hunker down and get on with it.
Well, wherever you are in the world on your Friday evening, we hope that you're well, and we thank you for joining us for some RCI TV action, the finale from the Friday Cup. This is the 5-second penalty. We're pretty sure. Nope, that wasn't it either. In fact, how many times did those two cars, oh, that was the contact earlier at the 107 and the 627. And wherever you are, we appreciate you being with us. And, well, like we said, we don't have a hard-nosed championship battle, but we do have wet racing at Donington. And quite frankly, we'll take that as a substitute most any day. I love a wet weather race, Ryan Mawson. You know this. I don't know what it is. It's just because it changes the dynamic of the race. You have a driver that maybe is faster or a car that may have an advantage, and you go into a rain situation, it seems to nullify that more often than not. Why is that?
Yeah, the rain is so much of what, I call the great equalizer, and some cars, just with the natural characteristics of the car, will perform a lot better. As I mentioned earlier, the Porsche rear-engined, a lot of weight of those rear wheels to, to get the traction down early. But then the flip side of that coin is that, it is still a difficult car to control. It is still quite twitchy on the limit. Whereas cars like the Bentley that he's actually chasing, that is still the 141 of Khrushchevin, they will be able to really put the power down a lot of it earlier than the Porsches, but it won't necessarily do anything, without that rear weight. But then, if you've got a driver who understands the wet, they know, the technique exactly for their car. I mean, like the 404, they're just flying along. They've obviously picked up this Mercedes, understood it in the wet, and they are long gone. It changes so many things for me. It's interesting to see not only how the cars react, but how the drivers.
Well, Bart Macha is usually one of the drivers for Connection Lost Racing. Macha not racing this particular weekend, but has messaged us in the booth, Brian, and said, the one time that I'm not driving the car, my car's leading. Suspicious. Bart, I wonder about that.
Yes, but don't count your chickens before they hatch yet. But yeah, you're so far 404, doing excellent things. Still 1 hour 40 yet to go. That's also what I'm kind of interested in is when it comes to the driver swap, then we'll really see, what what cars can do and what each driver can do. Some drivers really don't like the rain and they don't agree with the setup, or you've got such a lovely setup car, that car will just continue to climb and climb and climb.
Yeah, I've never mind the rain. To be fair, as soon as it was a thing that became fairly commonplace in Sims, even before that, when it was a rarity, I just enjoyed it. I enjoyed the challenge of racing in the rain. But you know who's not? Uri Svinček, who's continuing to fall back now, and the Bentley going completely off the track, getting very sideways and saving it maybe a pucker moment for Sim Smeets and the High Speed Ninjas 95, because if Svinček would have crashed, I don't think the 95 would have had anywhere to go.
Not looking down in that area of Old Hairpin, there's not many places that you can throw a car to avoid a crash without, causing a crash yourself, or just unsettling the car so much that, you will then become your own worst victim and end up with a spin. There are quite a lot of tracks, a lot of areas on this track, I should say, that are, yeah, just incredibly scary when you see a car off, because there's nothing that you can do at that point. A lot of it is a one line ordeal, and going off the line usually means a little bit of an accident. And it's looking back from the bumper of the 501, 627, even with that 5-second penalty, they are angry, they are looping, they are still charging up the field. Pace from that car, despite starting from last, is incredible. It would have been really interesting to see what they could have done had they started in second, for example.
Don't ever feel bad for us broadcasters in the booth, but this is Jarzabowski leading Mukowski, and they are very close and almost a touch. Maybe they did touch a little bit. This is the rear diffuser of Jarzabowski in the Ferrari as he's going to run wide here, and this is exactly how Mukowski got around Mulholland earlier, or perhaps that was Hofner, but either way, the same thing, getting around them in the tight, twisty sections of the track. And Svinček made a little friend. Oh, and now he's lost him.
Hey, you can't steal that. Give it back. We'll lose our deposit on the racetrack if we don't give that back.
Yeah, that's definitely probably has property of Donington Park, doesn't it, on it? So we're going to take a look back at how they got into that state in the first place. Hopner there, getting a little bit wide, and contact there between Svinček and that Smeets in the background as they all get close. A little bit of chrome horn action there, a little bump and run perhaps, as it hasn't worked because they're still side by side. And meanwhile, Smeets behind them, it's like, I really wish you would figure out who's leading this pack. But nonetheless, they are still racing each other. Crossover here, down to the inside. Can't quite get it done, as Hopner will continue to lead Svinček and Smeets. A couple of very tight corners there, but all of that amounts to just about nothing. You have to be aggressive, don't you, Mawson, in a condition like this, where the rain's coming down, the weather is causing everybody to slip around a little bit, and you got to be a bit aggressive here because you're near the back of the field. You can't afford to give up anything, especially if you give up something here. You might end up losing 2 spots because Smeets could just as easily follow them through.
Well, Smeets has sort of got the best the view of this battle, as it were. They have the luxury of picking and choosing when they want to follow. Just about managing to miss the 107. I think there's room for maybe a few more coats of paint there, just about. But for Smeets, yeah, they can watch the traffic in front and pick when they want to follow through. The 107 is probably in the worst scenario. If he goes for a move on the 197 and it does not pull off, he could easily lose the place to the 95, which is, fine by Smeets. It's another silver driver in front of him. Svinček looking up the inside, might go for the better run again into the Melbourne loop. But Bentley on Bentley, it's Can't really have any acceleration advantage there. Looks again to the inside, and Smeets, the 95, is looking to go all the way around the outside of the Melbourne Loop. Could not do it that time. That move is often quite advantageous as well, because it puts you on the inside for the last corner.
Yeah, all you have to do is keep your bumper in there, and then they can't close you off. But that's the hard thing. You have to get so close to the car on the apex, on the inside of Melbourne Hairpin, that you almost force them to give you room, and you just have to hang there long enough. But it's easier said than done, especially on a day like today. The only line that has any grip is the preferred line right now, as everywhere else has a standing pool of water. As continue to watch this unfold, as Hofner has a little bit of space here for the moment, only because Smeets and Svinček ended up side by side. And by the way, that's Keller in the background in the the 271, who is starting to come up in there. Oh, and has to check up, and it's going to lose a position. Svinček is going to lose a position because he had to check up, and almost from a lap ago, it looked like Smeets was going to, oh, that wasn't a checkup. He just missed the corner, Ryan Mawson.
107, yeah, it looked like the Bentley had turned in, but it just washed out. Obviously, was maybe it had one or two wheels off the preferred line, and that was it. No more turning anymore. So that was the 107. Just opened the door very kindly for the 95. And if anything, it looks like the 95 has had quite a good pace, even over the 197 in front of them. Once again, this was another car that was disconnected at the start, and they were allowed to start the race just from the back of the grid. I kind of say that the 197 might have now quite a fight on their hands.
Keep in mind, this is for third in high silver, Hofner and Smeets. Svinček will be fuming under his helmet right now after being moved, or not being moved, but after getting put back a position there after trying lap on lap to try and get around Hofner. But now the battle for class brewing. This isn't a battle for class, but it has been going on for the first 20 minutes of the race. Willemont ended up getting to start second place, but Ritz Crozen was able to beat them off of the line. But they've been just about this close for the entire first 20 minutes. Equal machinery, different class. Doesn't matter to either one of these drivers. You just get the feeling that Grant has been a little cautious here, because he's been very close indeed to the back of Ritz Crozen. And all that has done with these two sort of filling each other out has let Martin Lawrence skedaddle up the road. 5.3 seconds the gap to first, as the Connection Loss team is looking to put a 1 in the win column, a column that has had a goose egg in it this entire season. If I would have told you, Ryan, at the start, oh, he's going for it! Sam Smeets is going for it on Hofner, the block on Svinček. They're going to be 3 wide going down into Mulholland, or Melbourne.
And this is going to be a scary moment. Svinček's still on the inside. He might just about get it. There is an overlap there. The 95 can't close him off, as you said earlier. But the Porsche uses the acceleration. He does give him the room. And will the 107 manage to get it up the inside? He is alongside, but watch the drive of the Porsche out the corners. The Bentley can do nothing. He cannot put the power down as easy as that Porsche can. And now coming back into turn 1. They've managed to all sort themselves out. Svinček moves up a position, and Hofner is just left thinking, what happened there?
Oh my goodness, it's musical chairs, but with 4 tires and an engine. I love it, as Smeets finds the opportunity in the chicane, gets the pass done up 2 spots from a couple of laps ago, and just being very patient about it, but found a spot, found a little bit of a wrinkle that they could get through. And did, in fact, to great effect. And they went 3 wide through the Melbourne hairpin. I didn't think they were going to make it.
No, a lot of times it's difficult even going too wide through the Melbourne hairpin. It's not a nice smooth hairpin as it was. It's sort of 2 90-degree corners. It is very easy to give the car next to you just a little bit of a door ding. So going 3 wide through there would be even more scary. It's Svinček trying to close up through the S's. You can see the car darting off the track, and that's one thing we haven't quite mentioned about here, but I know it all too well, having raced here. The track limits here for that S's hairpin, that S's chicane, they do not play around. They are vicious here.
Yeah, they sure are. There's a couple other places that you can get a track limits penalty or track limits warning, rather. Of course, one of them is Old Hairpin as well. There's a couple spots where you just don't want to go wide or go too deep or cut off the corner too much. And the S is probably the majority of the time it's going to be where you can get those warnings. A 2 hour race, and you have to be very aware of how many warnings you have. Of course, the drivers know. The drivers will be relaying to the team how many they have. They'll know, and of course, you're always telling your driver, don't try to cheat the chicane. Don't try to cheat the chicane because you get 3 warnings. The next one you get, it is going to be a drive-through penalty, and that's going to absolutely kill your race. With so few cars in the race today, it's hard to see how you would come back from something like that. Other stewarding decisions being handed out, racing incident between the 95 and the 107. 5-second penalty for car 782. Avoidable contact causing the 70 to go off track. Warning for car 107. Braking late and dive bombing the 197. No further action between the 197 and the 107.
So the stewards have still got their work cut out there. It's not a it's not a kick your feet back up for the final race of the season and sort of call it done. Still got to have all of your eyes and ears all ready. And for some of the drivers, yeah, I'm pretty sure they've had it over the radio that we've been told we're being naughty and maybe dial it back a couple of degrees.
Well, you never want a penalty, but if you are going to get one, it might as well be the lowest penalty you can get, a 5-second penalty that'll be added on to the pit stop. All of these teams have to come in to the attention of their crew at some point, but I'm assuming they're going to put tires and fuel in and on the car. Certainly will need less fuel on a day like today than you otherwise would need to see. Well, we haven't seen Oliver Sets at all today for Volante Racing, but here they are trying to get the 7th place position away from Rossi. That's 2nd place in high silver in the 185, but the 70 has re-caught back up to the 185. Be interesting to see how Sets plays this, knowing this isn't for a position that pays them points. But still, you got to get by them to get up there towards Jarzabowski and the like. Speaking of the group in front of them, Mikowski, I don't need to tell you this because you assumed this, but Mikowski closing in on Cor Shaven in the 141. That's the championship leader, the Ballas Esports Ukraine team. And the gap was 1.3 seconds, then it was 1.1. Now it's 7/10 of a second. I don't see the 627 slowing down the closer they get to the front.
No, well, the running, in fact, their last lap, the last through the timing marker, was their personal best. That's a 132.151 was their last race. And to put that in perspective, the best for our leading car, the 404, that's a 132.046. So first and second place are incredibly close paced, and everyone else is at minimum 2 to 3 tenths behind them. But yeah, the 627 just carving up the field, which is probably what they're wanting to do. You need to get this kind of sort of pace on and a shuffle on before the field spreads out. It just becomes incredibly hard after all the pit stops have shaken out sometimes to catch people if they've got the jump on you or on a different strat. Sometimes that can just be it.
Well, it's kind of funny. The Ballas Ukraine team doesn't really need to do much here today. Would certainly not like to finish off the podium, but they just don't seem to have quite the pace. Mikowski in the 627 in the same boat as the leader with Martin Lawrence in the 404 Connection Lost guys. They're not really racing for anything championship-wise here. They've both long since been out of that, but today looked like the 2 strongest cars. You throw Grant Willemont in there as well, as the pass being made to the inside. That felt like a wave by to me.
Yeah, I think that the Ballas Ukraine esports team, they know what they have to do, which is basically finish in front of the other Bentley. And well, you're doing that by at least 2 positions. What is the point in even compromising your race? All you need to do is basically see the checkered flag at the current rate.
Yeah, you're right about that. The 141 out qualified the 70 and has maintained that position. So That's all they have to do. None of these other cars matter. None of these cars are a threat to them. Sure, they'd like to get a top 3, top 5, whatever, but it doesn't really matter too much for them today. As long as they keep it on the island and stay out of trouble, they're going to leave here with a trophy as well. So may not be the race win, but a championship trophy. Of course, it's a little bigger and shinier, isn't it? So big picture racing for Ballas Ukraine in the 141. Maybe not so much big picture for Grant Willemont, as they're just trying to get as far up the field as they can. 30 minutes now we've been going on in this particular configuration and this close. What's Grant's sort of tactic here? Is Grant just sort of waiting out Rince Crozen, or because he doesn't want to get involved with a car that's not in his class, obviously. He's already leading. He doesn't want to give him any sort of trouble, because if he does, that could throw Grant back there with Rossi in the 185. And he doesn't want to do that. Grant wants to win this race. So is it just follow the leader and hope they make a mistake, maybe?
Well, you say that, but then you sometimes see the 100 really close up. Watching their lap times, you know, the last and the best, both of them are incredibly close. You know, they're both at 132.5. You know, nearest makes the difference. I think for the 100, it is at least at the moment, it is just you know, follow the 8. You don't need to make any silly dives. If the driver in front of you has basically the same pace, you don't feel you're being slowed up by them. It can be really beneficial, you know, to your endurance race. You let the 185 either be passed by the pro drivers, or you know, they're struggling to try catch up to you. They're worrying about it. But if so, you just follow the person in front and gain some great time. We have seen a couple of light flashes from the 100, so it's mixed signals, I'd say.
Well, I have been reading chat. Brian Scheckerman says his teammate still driving with that cast ride, Mawson. You may have not heard, but Scheckerman's partner on this team has had a cast on for the last couple of weeks, still has a cast, and he won the AOR Tier Championship last Tuesday as well with the same cast. That's incredible dedication to driving.
And this is the man that went 3 wide earlier in the Melbourne hairpin and somehow came out on top of it all.
It boggles the mind. I sympathize with what Ivan just said. Thanks, Brian. Now you let me know how trash I am. The same, Brian. The same. You wouldn't catch me in a sim rig with a cast on. That wouldn't be my priority. But then again, I'm not esports pro level, and I think if not all of these guys are. So I think that's your difference.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's very typical racing driver style in it. It goes back even to any kind of old racing. You'd get drivers that have broken their arm that turn up, but to make it look like they haven't broken their arm, they just take the cast off and get in the race suit. No one questions it. You do the race, everything, and you know, then that's it. Yeah, so hats off to the 95, still doing incredibly well in, you know, 3rd place in silver with basically one hand.
I joked about this last week, but you know that old saying, I could beat you with one hand tied behind my back, literally happening out here today, although I suppose the cast would be in the front, but the sentiment is all the same. And I've done some weird things for sim racing because I couldn't miss races. I had a migraine so bad that I wore an eye patch because I couldn't see out of one eye. My migraine was so bad it was blurring my vision, so I just closed off that eye. I've done that in the past, and I've also had to map because I had a sprained ankle, I think it was, when I was a teenager, and I had to participate in a race, so I mapped the throttle and brake to the wheel so I could use that and wouldn't have to use my feet. But you wouldn't catch me driving one-handed with a cast, no.
I don't think I've done anything sort of that you know, scary or outlandish. I think probably the most thing that I ever had was I've had a similar thing. Broke my arm once, had a cast, and all I did to get to work and back was I put you know, one of those like forklift or like the trucker steering knobs on. Stuck that on my car because I had an automatic classic Mercedes Benz. So you just used to reach over with one hand, click it into drive, and then leave it. Drive to work.
That's incredible. I gotta say, a lot of people say stuff about gamers and sim racers and stuff like that, but don't you ever doubt their dedication to their craft and their sport. And folks, it is a sport. Trust me. You find me a sport is defined by an athletic competition, right? What's more athletic than driving one handed in a race in the rain around Donington? I mean, that's insane.
Ah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, you do some of these really long endurance races. You know, people say, "Oh, you're just driving some virtual race cars around. That's not tiring." Oh, believe you me, when you've done, you know, about 8 hours of a of the 12 hours of Spa, which I did for my team because we basically only had two drivers and one of them couldn't do a lot. So I did 8 out of 12 hours in a GT4 around Spa. I was, you know, yeah, very, 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 very tired, and my arms were noodles by the end of it. And from that day forward, I was like, no one can say that it is not athletic.
Yeah, I can tell you some of the best things I've ever done for my sim rig is hook up sort of an air conditioning and a heating system, that keeps you cool in the summer and keeps you warm in the winter. And that helped for creature comfort, for driver comfort, and all that as well. But I think whenever you drive in those long endurance races, and even in a 2 hour race, there'll be drivers here that feel this tomorrow, where you especially if you're Grant Willemont and you're in a fight, you're all tensed up, you're very tense, you're trying to drive very precisely, you're trying to not make mistakes, you're battling a car in front of you, you're battling the elements. There's a lot going on, and all of that leads you to be a bit more tense, have a little more tension in your arms, and maybe at the end of this, when you get out of the car and you feel a little bit of tiredness, a little bit of tautness in sort of your wrist and your forearm area, maybe even in your shoulders. I've, I've had to lie to coworkers before on why I was holding my shoulder at work before, because I spent all weekend in the sim rig and hurt myself. So it is a sport. It is. It just anything that requires that level of sort of control, athleticism, and it is different than normal athletics, certainly, because there isn't necessarily the classic term of dexterity. But trust me, you get any normal athlete into a sim rig with a direct drive wheel, you tell them to go run a several hour stint at Le Mans and see if they don't crawl out of that sim rig. They will.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you've got some of the load cell pedals, that makes it a especially interesting thing. And speaking of getting tense, you know, and under pressure, I'm sure that if we could just about see it in the rearview mirror through some of these corners, have you noticed who's creeping up on this battle now? It's the purple McLaren.
Yeah, it sure is, isn't it? Not giving up are the excuse me, not giving up is anybody. And of course, after being let by the 141, we expect they got let by anyway. Of course, Mikowski continuing to gain on the top three. We didn't really talk about this because I didn't think we assumed this would be possible, but they are the fastest car on the track. As you said, they could potentially win this race. I think that's only happened twice in RCI history, by the way, where a car started last and ended up winning the race. And of course, the most famous of all those cases was Jardier in the Porsche Cup Championship at Laguna Seca. Qualified on pole, spun on the formation lap, started dead last, won the race. He had to beat Chris Huke on that day, and he had to beat him to the line. In fact, got side by side with him off the final turn and just got him at the line, completing the worst to first challenge. And of course, Mikowski trying to do that here today to become only the third driver to do that.
Well, if there's ever a team to do it, it's going to be the Carbon Sim Sports 27. You know, the pace of this car has just not fallen off at all. You know, we're a good 40 minutes almost into this stint. 40 minutes in, you know, just under 2 minutes. That is a long old time, even on these wet tires. You know, the track has been drying out a little bit, but the temperature has not wavered, and this car has had so much pace. You've got to imagine that, you know, they will have shredded some rubber off the tires. And actually, in front of us, that's the 100 of Grant Willemont. He's looked up to the inside of the number 8, and that is position done for Grant Willemont. He has decided that he is playing follow the leader no more.
Let's take another look at that, at how that got along. Well, the 8 got a really bad chicane there in the S's, and just taking advantage as Grant Willemont down into the Melbourne hairpin just gives him no chance to defend it and covers him off there on the exit. And just that's how you draw it up. If Grant Willemont was waiting for an opportunity, he got one, and that's all he needed.
And there we go. So Grant Willemot. It'll be interesting to see now, will the 100 actually pull away? We thought that these cars were very similar paced, but it might have just been that the 100 was, following the 8 as a bit of a strategy call. Keep his eye on the gap. It's just under half a second as it sits right now. And you've also got to factor in, what will the 627 passing by do? Will they just let it by? I mean, Crozen, he is a pro car. 627 is another pro driver.
That's a very good question. Gowski is going to have to make some decisions, and so is Grant Willemont, as it turns out. Got some information from our chat. Love to see the interaction and the information coming. This is from the 837. They're having horrible luck for the second race in a row. They were taken out on the opening lap, and it's reduced to traffic due to the fault of something else. You knew it was going to happen to somebody. You don't come to Donington and it doesn't happen, especially in the wet, and it's unfortunate. It looks like the 837 was the sacrificial lamb on the day. Robert McCall also in chat saying, sadly missed the fun, guys. Junior still in hospital. Will be home on Monday. Robert, give all our best to Junior and the entire McCall family. Hope he gets better in a hurry. And we miss you guys out on track as well. The South African family racing team that has been so very quick in the past couple of months here on RCI. They went from battling for top 10s, Ryan Mawson, to top 5s and getting wins, being a threat every week to win, and just hope that they get back healthy.
Yeah, it is so nice, to see a team improve like that. We go from strength to strength, really, and when they start really gelling with the car and the tracks, and as you see a lot of times as well, it's just really depends how much seat time you've got, how well rehearsed you are with all the nuances the game will throw at you. So yeah, great to see that.
Wolf Matushka mentioning that they went from worst to first as well. I think you might have been the second team. I don't know who the second team was. The reason I remember the Jardier story is because I was absolutely flabbergasted by that. I was watching that race sort of beside myself, but rather besides, I think that might have been the Wolf Matushka team and Jardier. That's good company to keep, those two.
Oh yeah, if you're gonna have your name on a plaque with anything, it's some of the great names for it. And we'll have to, I say, we need like a little list somewhere of people who have done X, Y, and Z.
I think it should come with an extra trophy if you start from worst and end up finishing in first place. Of course, we have had championships night out, as you might remember, Mawson, where the field every week was inverted due to points, and Hofner getting nearly rear-ended by Keller there, but excellent car control on all accounts, and of course the defensive driving and the offensive driving. And oh boy, Keller, who has had a, we'll say, interesting first 45 minutes, we'll say that, is trying to gain back a position in class. That would be for the fourth place position. Hofner has had an interesting adventure as well, but unfortunately for them, they've gone backwards quite a bit.
Yeah, their interesting expedition has sadly been in the wrong direction of probably where they wanted to go. Still, you do have to take it, credit to them that they have still showed up. They've had a couple of silvers drop out. They're still sticking it through right to the end. And Keller, who had that early race spin, they've really picked up the pace again. They've managed to dust themselves back off, and it really looks like they have the pace over the 197. Once again, Donington is just a track where, unless the person in front of you makes quite a substantial mistake, or you are a lot braver on them into some of the corners, there's nothing really you can do to a driver if they know how to really defend, drive defensively well. Even with now, will be probably a lot of these teams will be on more of a quali fuel. We've burnt off all the race fuel that they started. The cars are going to be as fast as they're ever going to be in a straight line. Maybe there's some of the handling characteristics on with the tire wear, but each car is gonna be matching each other pretty well down the straight.
Well, we know that, don't we? We've seen that. We've seen that with Willemont. We've seen that with Mikowski. We saw that earlier with Maholland, and I it's just and Smeets as well, right? You have to get yourself in a position to capitalize on somebody else's mistake. It's easier said than done because the mistakes that we've seen that have let the likes of Smeets, Willemont, Mikowski through, they weren't big mistakes. They didn't even go off track. They just went wide by one lane and they were able to capitalize on that. Well, the rain is persistent. It doesn't look like it's going to let up. The track's actually pretty decent. It is fully wet, obviously, but there is that nice run in sort of line, and it's more than one car long, or it's more than one car's width wide, I should say. So that's actually helping the drivability and the raceability of the racetrack. And nobody's really struggling too much now. Of course, the tires will wear and do wear these wets, but they're not going to wear quite heavily. The other thing I mentioned about 30 minutes ago is fuel. You will inevitably have to take less fuel in a wet weather race because you're on the throttle a little less. And what has happened there? Keller has shot off the track almost like it was attempting to get to, oh no, and he's hit the wall. Has Nicholas Keller in the 271 that looked to me like they were trying to pull out and make a move on Hopner, but it's ended with them in the wall.
What I was wondering though, I did briefly see the brake lights of the Bentley flash on as well. I wonder if the Bentley had sort of half lost it, was trying to correct the car. The 271 has gone for the run. They've seen that they've had problems, but they've just run out of room to make it work. And in doing evasive maneuvers, have ended up off the track, pretty much where they also went off at the start of this race. So sad time for the 271, who has actually retired back to the pits. And by looking at it.
I gotta say that was, as you said, very awkward indeed. The 271 down the pit lane. This will not satisfy the pit requirement because they will have to come down pit road again, even if they do satisfy the minimum pit requirement, which is a driver change, nothing more, nothing less. They will also have to come down again because there's a 67-minute stint timer, and they're not within that threshold yet. So I'm wondering if Keller is retiring the car. You wouldn't think so, but perhaps just fixing the car, getting out of the car, and whomever gets into that 271, they will have to come down pit lane within the final 10 minutes or so to reset the stint limit. They won't have to stop or anything. They just have to enter pit lane to get that done. So right now, Team Willemont by Prime Motorsport sitting in the pit lane to the attention of the team with, I would call, significant damage to that car. And I'm with you, Mawson. I'm curious, did Hopner check up? And Sebastian Theobald is now in the 271. So they've done their mandatory stop, but they will have to come in again to deal with the stint limit of 67 minutes, which, again, they don't have to stop. All they have to do is roll down pit lane, and Sebastian can stay in the car as well. As that wasn't Svinchek, that was Kitch in the 837 who had to check up there. So we suspect they've done a little bit of repair. We're going to take a look at this. This is Matt Kitch catching the car coming out of pit lane. Very close stuff there in Red Gate, but they've just about managed it.
You can see how much the Bentleys want to understeer around here. It is still quite a brute in the wet. It wants to shuffle out and doesn't really like turning in. I mean, it didn't really like turning in at Donington at the best of times. The Bentley sort of prefers the tracks that have a lot more speed. It can, that gigantic biplane wing that's on the back of it to generate some downforce. But Donington, apart from going down the crane of curves, a lot of the corners are kind of too slow for it to really gain anything. And Sam Smead's still on the charge so far, looking at all over the back of the 782. Now they will fall behind in the pit stops with that 5-second penalty, but the 95 looks like they've got the pace. They just want to get by and maybe catch up to the back of the 185 of Rossi, who's their next fellow silver driver.
I'm gonna be honest, I'm just surprised Mikowski's not by Rince Crozen yet. It's very close, less than a second between them. To answer a question from Wolf Matushka, will I be doing the Thursday broadcast? I am going to be doing that if nobody else is. We will have a broadcasted Thursday championship coming up, and I believe that's GT4s. And if nobody else steps up in the next little while, I will certainly. I'm already on the broadcasting list for that race, so you'll likely get me at some point, but you might get me for the entire Thursday championship. So there's looking up to that. Speaking of which, we got a new Friday championship to look up to. And what are you thinking, Mawson? You thinking about doing Fridays, maybe 1 hour races?
Yeah, I think that should be quite a good, quite a good watch as well. And the Friday Champ always sort of brings out some of the some great racing, even right down to the end of it. Seeing the 95 looks to the inside, the 782. The door was briefly there, but it is not one Porsche wide. They've got to rethink their strategy and try again. But I really think that the 95 has definitely got the pace. It's just the curse of Donington. How do you pass? Where do you pass?
Very carefully and only when they make a mistake, Mawson, I think is what we're learning from today.
Pretty much.
Oh, well, you heard it here live on air because we hadn't previously discussed that, Mawson and me. So you might get, for the return of the Friday Sprint Championship coming up next season, in just a few weeks, in fact, you might get Jesse Lee, Ryan Mawson, and Stewie in the box for that one as well. On Fridays, of course, working on Saturday's schedule would be interesting on Saturday as well, but we'll have to see. No plans for Night Owl at current time. Sim Smeets, though, as we shuffle back to the race, just putting all the pressure that Mulholland can withstand in the 782. It's always interesting to see the smaller car hounding the bigger car, but that's certainly what this is like. And of course, Smeets there, you saw how narrow he took the chicane, trying to maybe catch the 782 out. Oh, and he gets caught out himself as Mulholland goes onto the binders a little bit earlier than Smeets was going to, and he has to go wide here. He thinks about going to the inside, doesn't want to have contact, goes to the outside. That's a veteran driver move right there by Smeets.
Yeah, the 95, it looked like they just touched ever so slightly that painted rumble strip on the left. And you can see, it wanted to snap the car away from them. Well held, though, with the Porsche. Normally, once it starts to go, you've already blinked and you are, backwards into a raging fireball somewhere in that car. But yeah, it's still, even though we've, the cars have been running over them, those painted surfaces, they are still absolutely lethal. They will be lethal all the way to the end of this race.
You're never going to get the water off the painted surfaces, are you? Anything with paint on it and anything that is maybe a plastic curb or not asphalt, it will remain wet for a very, very long time. You're never going to disperse the water off those things. In fact, the water typically flows over them. So it's going to be a hazard. It always is a hazard. I don't like hitting curbs in the dry. Imagine doing it in the wet with confidence. Some of these drivers are doing. And some of them, I've noticed, are completely avoiding the curbs. The 95 doing a mixture of the two. Here we go again, trying to do the same thing. Has a better run out of the corner, but the grunt of the Bentley is going to keep him in front. Maybe going to try a move down to the inside. Not quite there. Has to stay in line this time around. And they will continue to go nose to tail. And that flash up at the front, by the way, that was Rince Crozen and Mikowski nose to tail as well. As a couple of battles at opposite ends of the field. You can just see how much better turn-in Smeets' car has than Mulholland. Smeets is on the inside of Mulholland off of every corner.
And that's exactly where you need to be in the Porsche. If you're going to go up against the car in front being the Bentley, you are never in a Porsche going to win an absolute drag race versus the Bentley. They are just a better speed car. What you have to do in the Porsche is you've got to use the monumental brakes that that car has and all of the handling. You know, you've got to carry corner
Oh, baby!
speed, as the 95 is trying to carry as much corner speed as he dares using all of the track. I mean, we pay for it, so, you know, I would say use it. But that is really what you have to do with that car. That's why it is so difficult to drive, you know, to get that extra 5-10%. It is just pure confidence in the car.
If you've ever rented a track for an event, not that many people do, there's a surcharge for groundskeeping. Well, that's why, because sometimes you go off onto the grass. You are renting the track, not the grass, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, he may have a moment there. I think Smeets might have had a moment, but no, couldn't quite do it. What happened there? We cut away for just a second. I thought Smeets had him dead to rights. Let's look at this again, Ryan. I thought he had him.
So we're coming in to the chicane, and it looks
Oh,
like
he has the free.
the 95 just had nowhere to go. The Bentley starts to move back over. You can see that where the Porsche wanted to go, he wanted to launch it around the outside, but it was just too little, too late. The big Bentley moves back over, and the 95 has to do it all again. But that's showing, though, that the Bentley,
Oh.
under pressure, you know, that crack is beginning to show.
I like the smart driving by Smeets there. I love the defensive driving by Mulholland. Didn't have a great chicane, but did not give Smeets any opportunity. Yeah, and you may have said, well, why didn't Smeets just yank it hard right? Well, then you'd have been in the wall like the 271 was. You can't do that in the wet.
No, I think, you know, smooth and flowing is basically the wet weather driving. And oh, here we go to the inside. The 627, the 8 squeezes him as much as they dare.
Touch.
There is a car wide.
Spin, touch.
There's a touch. One car wide into the Melbourne hairpin. It's, you know, it's very, very difficult. His place was given back. Mikowski decided that was not the way, and I think he just couldn't get it stopped on the absolute apex. Spins the 8 around, but does let them regain it again. I'm sure the stewards will have to get out their pencils once again.
They're probably going to let that go because the position was given back, didn't involve anybody else, and it only lost them both time. But they'll probably let that go. They might give a warning for driving into the corner a little too deep, maybe to the 627. But other than that, I don't see a reason to give them a penalty. Also, all that would do is break up this battle as the 271 trying to stay out of the way. Oh no! The 271 trying to stay out of the way. Heavy contact with Christoph Mikowski. The 271 is trying to stay out of the way, Ryan Mawson, but loses it into the 4th place car.
With the 271, you could see that they wanted to get, you know, as far right off the track. I wonder if they just dipped a couple of wheels off. You saw that car start to spin, you know, into the circuit. And that was that. Nothing that the 271 could have done to save that. And for Mikowski, they were just the unfortunate victim of that. A car in your windscreen. You can see this is on board with the 271. They're trying to get out of the way. The back end's gone here. You can't do anything about that.
That'll give you cold sweats as a driver. That's a nightmare if you're a racing driver. You're trying to do the right thing and you get involved anyway. There's just no grip out there, and they were trying to turn left on the sort of the most extreme right portion of the racetrack where the standing water is, had no control, and huge contact there. As minimal as the Crozen-Mikowski contact was, that was pretty mega. And a smart move here by the 627 as Smeets trying to get around Mulholland and just about will get it done. But a smart move by the 627 immediately down the pit lane. This is within the pit window. Mikowski will get out of that car. New driver installed. And certainly some damage repair at this point.
Yes, we'll have to keep an eye on the pit delta, see what, if anything, they will lose over the 30 seconds, a standard 30-second stop in damage. Obviously, that car, though, I think, you know, with fully repaired and a fueled up and a fresh driver, I still think that they have got a good shot at catching back up again. It's probably the only car that has a shot of going from the last to first in this field. But yeah, it's such a sad moment for the 95. They've finally got around that the Bentley of Mulholland. It'll be interesting to see, though, what they need to do other than go off the track. They need to put in some good laps now. They need to overcut their Bentley in front, see if they can come out getting in front of them.
I don't know how many times we've seen Smeets go completely wide in old hairpin there and drive onto the grass and save it. I can, folks at home, I can assure you that's not normal. That's not something you usually get away with in the dry, let alone the wet. So I don't know what the 95's doing differently. Sim Smeets certainly knows, but I wouldn't want to go to the well over and over again if I didn't have to. But very confident driving in this purple and white 95 High Speed Ninjas car.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see when they do come in. Obviously, the stint timer is 65 minutes. So I'm expecting a lot of the drivers now are going to be sort of coming in around about this hour and a bit mark. It'll be the cars that can run the lower fuels. I think will want to be able to stay out that little bit more. So you've got fresher tires and the lower fuel load at the end of the race, and it might just make that tiny bit of difference towards the end.
Well, 67-minute, the limit. If you are Martin Lawrence for Connection Lost, you're probably going to stay out as long as possible here. You have no reason to come in, right? So you're probably going to get as close as you can. I personally would leave a 1 lap buffer. I always typically like to do that. It helps with fuel. It also, in case you have a slow lap, or there's something that happens in front of you, or maybe you have a spin, you can't plan on what if unless you give yourself a little bit of room. So typically speaking, there are drivers that like to press their luck and they like to come out or come in right at the limit. But I think if you are Martin Lawrence, if you are the veteran Connection Lost Racing team, you will likely bring them in somewhere around 55 to go. So Lawrence probably has 2 more laps in him before he brings that car in. There's just no reason to bring him in earlier, especially with a lot of cars cycling through pit lane. If you come in right now, especially case in point that last lap, there were cars coming in and coming out at the same time. You want to have an open field in front of you. So hopefully Lawrence has some of the Connection Lost guys coaching him over there on when the best time might be. That's another big thing as well. Just coming in whenever you have clear space, regardless of how much time is left. Well, this race has been interesting to say the least. By the way, the 271 that was involved in that most recent incident with the 627, that car has retired officially after that incident. Jarvis now in the 627. That car down and away, served their 5-second penalty. And what do you see down there, Mawson? Do you think they repaired any damage?
So looking at it, their pit delta, if I can actually find my glasses and my piece of paper, so far is not showing up. It's had a little bit of a subword. And there we go. That's I've just had that in my ear. So their pit delta was a 131, and we have a 122 versus. So they have lost a good chunk of time in that damage repairs.
Well, halfway into the race, and as pit stops continue, Rins Crozen and Cor Shaven into the pit lane as well. It's about that time to talk to all of you at home. Hello, chat. How are you? Hope you're doing well, and we hope that you're going to have some really interesting weekend plans. Do you not have weekend plans? That's too bad. You could always join an RCI championship. Of course, we have Night Owl, which is coming up to its conclusion. Signups will be open sometime soon in the next couple of weeks for the new Night Owl championship. That includes, of course, all of the crazy Night Owl action there. And of course, the new GT4 championship is upcoming in just a few weeks. The undoubtedly signups for the Friday champ will be open. Usually it's post race of the finale, but I haven't got confirmation of that. So expect the Friday signups anytime soon. So if you're looking for some excellent racing, why not sign up over on our Discord? You can find a link in the description on how to get started. Doesn't matter if you're an esports pro or a beginner just starting, we have a split for you. We'd love to have you on the track. And it all starts with joining the Discord. We can show you how to get involved. We would love to have you. And, well, who knows? Maybe you'll end up on a broadcast one of these days. On top of all of that, we invite all of our chat to like, subscribe, hit the bell for more GT racing content. Of course, our schedule here with a lot of the championships ending, well, you know what they say, one ends and another one begins. And it has been a very interesting sort of entry to fall as these championships end in what I refer to as the serious sim racing season, the fall and winter months in the Northern Hemisphere. All the big championships, all the big stars come out, and we are no different, gearing up for the likes of the next Friday championship, the next Monday, and of course the Thursday GT4 as well, all coming into play. So why not like, subscribe, hit the bell? Don't miss a single time we go live. We'd love to have you in chat, and we love chatting with you mid-race. One of the things that we do here that not a lot of other people do, apparently. So get involved with that. And of course, a big thank you to all of our partners that make this race and every race possible. Race Department, AK Informatica, Driver 61, Fanatec, and Sim Racing GP. You can get 25% off your driver coaching at driver61.com by using our discount code in the description. Get yourself some driver coaching, 25% off. It can make you a better driver. We talked about Mike Jones getting driver coaching over at driver61.com, and he ended up being several seconds quicker. He was a transformed man, strangely enough, and his teammates actually didn't hate him being in the car after that. So 45% off driver coaching, driver61.com. Big thank you to Fanatec, of course, and AK Informatica providing our servers, and everyone else. We appreciate their partnership as well. And the final 54 and a half minutes of the Friday Enduro Season 2 underway here. Only a handful of cars haven't pitted. Martin Lawrence and Smeets have left this a bit late. The 95 is in pit lane. So is Tobias Hofner in the 197. But this is Martin Lawrence for Connection Loss Racing. They are not in pit lane yet. They don't have a choice. They have to come down pit lane this time.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Now that it's the stint timer, they must be cutting it incredibly fine. I think there would be, you know, the typical Formula One style of in this lap, and shout at the driver until you physically see them turn the wheel into the pit lane. But that is the last of the late pitters, as it was. The 404 finally coming down the pit lane, and there is the 95 of Smeets just leaving the lane.
But by the way, I want to bring up something you just told me in private, Mawson, and I got a question I want to ask you. But before I do that, a correction. Bart Macha has corrected me. Signups for the Friday Sprint Championship are open on this coming Monday. They normally would be open today, but they're unavailable until Monday. So the Friday Championship, the new one, signups open on Monday. So get involved with that, and thank you, Bart Macha, for that as well. So Ryan Mawson, you were having a we'll call it a soda. We'll call it a soda. But what were you drinking it out of?
Stein. It's basically a German pint glass. Well, I think it's
I know what a Stein is. My question is why?
Because it's my only big glass, and there's a story behind this glass. It's a Radburger. So any of you Germans who may be listening, you know, in Europe, you'll know what Radburger is. And I got this when I was in Berlin, and I'm having a drink in the beer garden. Took it back to my hotel room because there was a convention, you know, other things to do. Finished my drink, put it on the side. Day one goes by, clean the room. Stein's still there. Huh. They must have forgot it. It's fine. I'll just leave it there. Day two, it's still there. Day three, it's still there. And I says, if it's still there on the last day of this con, I'm having it, because they don't care about it, obviously. Day four came, and it was still there. So it came home with me all the way from Berlin to Huddersfield, and it's a good glass. You know, it's like I like it because you don't have to constantly keep going to fill it up. So if you've got, you know, an endurance race that you need to keep your voice nice and crisp, or you just are lazy, you don't want to go and fill it up constantly. Half a liter of that, and that'll do you. But yeah, the added side effect of that is you might need to go and flush the radiator after drinking it all.
All I got out of that story is I'm Ryan Mawson and I'm a Stein thief. Is what I got out of that.
Well, I mean, you do pay the deposit in Germany. You do pay the deposit for the glass. So technically, I didn't get my deposit back. So I mean, I bought the glass, I suppose. It's like you get with the Nurburgring cups. You know the plastic little Nurburgring cups. They have a little deposit on
Yeah.
those, but I never ever give the cups back because it's always just nice to have a Nurburgring cup. There are loads of them for every time I've been there. You know, the various like old timer Grand Prix, Formula One. You know, DTM's. They've all got little specific cups, and yeah, I have a lot of them.
For those of you that don't have the pleasure of spending hours of your day with Ryan Mawson, I just want to point out that's why I love working with the guy. I learn something new every day.
Exactly. We've got loads of cutlery and things like that from various racetracks. I have somewhere. I have a BRDC, sort of silverware set at the British Racing Drivers Club, because we were fancy once and I got it bought for me. It's like, this is the type of silverware for when you need to go to a fancy tea with your grandma and you need to use the correct knife and all this type of jazz.
Oh dear, I don't know anything about that. My grandma ate off of styrofoam plates back in the day, so I don't know anything about that. But I will say that you told me that you were drinking out of a Stein, and I thought, oh well, it's Friday night. It's work week's over. He's having a, but you're not. You're having a soda out of out of a Stein of all things.
Yeah, exactly. It looks nice. Like I said, it's a good size, and I do like the look of it. The only sad thing is that the Radberger has all but washed off from the many years because
Ah,
I got this. This is at least with has been in my possession at least 7 or 8 years. So it was a long time ago. I'm pretty sure that the Estrell in Berlin. I'm pretty sure they still use the same Steins. There's someone walking around in the kitchen going, "Where's that Stein? Put it down 7 years ago. I don't know where I put it."
there's posters with your name on it at that
Yeah,
particular venue,
wanted.
Ryan Mawson. I'm pretty sure wanted Dirty Stein Thief. Well, let's reset the race for you real quick. Martin Lawrence out of the leading car, the 404 Connection Lost AMG. Peter Roche in that car now. And of course, we have the 100 Porsche still in second place with Heath behind the wheel. And Robin Baugh has climbed into the number 8. Ala Pitchik in the 141 for the championship leader team. Back up into fourth place after the pit stops ensued. And Sizek in the 501 Ferrari rounding out the top 5. Strappa has climbed in the 185 for the second place high silver team. And of course, the championship leaders who are looking like championship winners so far today. Chris Melbourne, as pictured here in the 70, Minnow Crozen in the 782 in eighth place, and Brian Scheckerman, who was in our chat earlier in the 95 Porsche, relieving his broken-armed comrade in that car in third and high silver today. We talked earlier about Garbus being in the 627. It's going to be interesting to see if they can get some of these positions back. Scheckerman will be next. Dusan Slizik in the 107 in that Bentley, Geisler in the 837, and Kroll in the 197. A lot of sevens in this championship, I have just noticed. But the only retirement, the 271 after the contact with the 627.
So far, and we've had a bit of a flip story of what the Hungara race was. Remember when we said we didn't quite know what the dominant car might have been. I mean, it could have had to have been something with the Bentley being 1, 2, 3, and 4. But yeah, maybe Donington is just not the track for the Bentley. The highest being the 4 for the 141, which has been dominant this entire season. Kind of like when you put a Ryan Racing in a Bentley, they will just well. But yeah, perhaps with the Bentley's maybe just not the sharpest implement round Donington.
Well, here's the thing: whenever the schedule comes up and your team signs up, you have to make a call. Do we go with a car that we're familiar with, that we're comfortable with, knowing that we are going to struggle? Or do you change script? I've seen it go both ways with some of the other teams where they have changed the car they're in specifically because they felt like the track list suited a different car. Then there's other teams that stick to their guns that don't ever change car really, and that's fine as well. What would you rather do, Mawson? Because me personally, I'm going to stick with what I know.
I used to try the whole sort of looking at the tracks and the chasing the bop, as it were. You know, you kind of work out by lap times of, what can this car do as an absolute lap time, and looking at the tenths between the cars and all this and basically what I worked out was it is all completely, pointless. I just now pick a car that I am familiar with and I stick with, which for me would be the Bentley. I'd be the same here. It would be a struggle for me. But I tried a couple of seasons of various, racing seasons to drive other things. I mean, I've driven the McLaren around here, for example, and that for the first, stint and a half until I really got used to the car was really, really difficult. I found that jumping between cars, at least for me, was just not the strategy. There are some drivers though that I know do just have that raw pace who can jump from, they're racing a Mercedes Evo one race to racing a Porsche to driving around in a Ferrari. It's, that is their talent. But for me, I need something that's consistent and that I can learn and know all its nuances.
Yeah, I've always been that way. I'd rather stick with something I'm familiar with and hope that, maybe we find a little something extra. Maybe, uh, maybe we'll just be able to figure it out on the fly, especially in the wet. As I typically drive Ferraris, and nowadays, and I know it's some of its strengths and its weaknesses at this point, and you just sort of hang on for some of the races because whatever is a bad race for you is going to be good for somebody else, and vice versa. There'll be some tracks, as long as you're smart about it, that are really good for you, and maybe you'll have the upper hand. It's how racing is. Even with BOP, you never fully nullify the strengths of certain cars at certain places. It is just
Well, that is just over the radio in our ear. So the 627, they have actually retired from the race. Look on the timing board. They are gone, ladies and gentlemen. That garage door has been closed. Car will no longer take part.
Yeah, I feel like that's a connection issue. Remember, they qualified second but started last in the field due to dropping connection. I don't think that was them waving the white flag. I think that was connection drop there, Ryan.
Most likely, yeah. We've seen that car. They've had a few connection issues. We noticed it pre-stream as well in practice. It reared its ugly head a little bit, but be a sad day for the 627. The pace of that car though was just monumental. It's one of those, always the $1 million question, isn't it? What could they have done if they had started second? We may never know. For the 404 though, made their day a hell of a lot easier. They've, pulled out now an almost 12-second gap to the 100. Still 42 minutes left to run.
Yeah, for the 404, it's music to their ears. The only car that looked like they could beat them has completely disappeared. So for Roche, their job very simple: keep it on the island, keep it on the black, and kind of gingerly walk your way to the end here. The only thing that could trip them up is obviously getting off track, getting a drive-through penalty, something of that sort, because the battle for second is re-ensuing as well between Heath and Baugh as they're nose to tail. And speaking of that, Strop and Melbourne nose to tail as well.
Yeah, Chris Melbourne really trying to go at it. He's getting as close as he dares to the rear end of that 185. Obviously, a driver who knows precisely where the front of his Bentley is and will put it, a couple of mil off the end of your bumper. The 70 is looking up to the inside. Can he get the run? They actually know the Aston Martin just about manages to get it. The Aston Martin, one of its weaknesses in the dry can be one of its greatest strengths in the wet as well. This car's quite notorious for the turbo lag that ensues. but it sometimes makes getting the traction down in the wet so much easier, but not if you do that, not if you swing it around through the chicane.
Got the preferred line into the corner, is going to run a bit wide, going to dime it off the corner and hopefully get a run out, and does just do that as Tobias Strappa, or excuse me, Tommaso Strappa able to get the pass or maintain position in that case as Melbourne trying to pass in Melbourne doesn't come off.
Yes, it was a from Melbourne in Melbourne, but not to be. And these two, the number 8 has caught back up to the 100. It did look like it for a while that the 100 really was starting to run away from the 8. Obviously, the driver change. What I did mention at the start of the race, it'll be interesting to see how each driver handles the wet conditions and their car. I think now it's swapped back round. I think that the 8 might have the pace over the 100, but once again, they've got to get around them.
Yeah, I think you're very right about that. Different drivers have different strengths, and of course, the setup is in a team event. It's usually a compromise as Ba going down to the inside. Of course, Ba was the one who qualified this car and did a really good job of that. And now getting the pass done, very little contest there, as Heath might have just sort of let that go because, again, they're so far in front of Strappa in the 185 that they're still on for the win here, barring some magical sort of snafus. So there's no real reason to fight for the 100 Porsche, fight with a car that's not paying points. So 100 back behind the 8 as Ba now up into second. Pay very close attention to Ba and Roche's times. The interval between them could be very important here. Now, does Roche have the pace that Lawrence had in that car? Because like I was saying before that pass happened, setup's usually a compromise. And in some cases with some of these teams, it's not so much a compromise as it's suited to your faster driver, and your slower driver, it just sort of makes do with what they have. It's hard to tell which one's faster or slower on these top teams, but I would reckon Robin Ba, the faster of the two for the 8 team. But we'll have to see how that all shakes out.
Yeah, well, once they've gone through the timing beam again for the second lap, we'll see what their last was. Obviously, it was still very close, actually, both their lasts, but Robin Barr had to get through the traffic, as it were, the 100, making it easy on themselves. As he says, you don't need to risk your race. You can still come on the podium and win your class. So, you know, for some of the drivers, they will think that just what is the point in even trying it? But that is not a regulation. You know, if you are a silver, you can fight a pro, exactly like what we're seeing on screen. Melbourne passing Stropper, it won't affect Stropper and it won't affect Melbourne in any way, shape, or form. If you want to hang on to it, you are more than entitled to do that.
Tommaso Strappa not looking like they're willing to give this spot up. Defensive line the last time through here didn't give up the line to Chris Melbourne and didn't do it in this occasion either. So I think Strappa here is playing for keeps and, in fact, going defensive a little bit here into the final turn. And what do you think about that? If it was me, I'd be telling my teammate, just let him go. It doesn't matter. But I don't know. He's not doing that.
Yeah, it's one of those odd ones, I guess. And it depends on the driver's style. Some drivers really just enjoy the racing that they're given. Stropper is in a bit of a no man's land by himself. It might actually be quite fun, for a last go around to have someone that you have to engage your brain with. You have to defend and think about all these things rather than just driving around. But I know I fall into the former category where does it affect our race? Nope. Let him go then. I'm just a live and let live type of driver, really. Unless it's someone in front for position, in which case then, the target has been locked.
I've accidentally stirred up drama. Rins Crozen was listening to the broadcast and say, I feel insulted that I'm the slower driver for the 8. Well, Rins, if you were the faster driver, why weren't you the one qualifying the car early?
Oh, here we go, ladies and gentlemen.
That's not that your fight's not with me, Rins Crozen. Your fight's with Robin Ba, who took qualifying from you there.
Also, then code does not represent any of the following. Yeah.
Oh, dear.
Uh,
Now, Rins Krozen is a very dynamic driver, very fast as well, and it is hard to say, but based on and here's how we base it, if you're the driver doing the qualifying, and we expect that to be the faster driver in the conditions at that time, because otherwise, why wouldn't you have the faster driver in the car at that particular interval? Now, the way that RCI works is you can change driver post qualifying, so it doesn't really matter. And obviously, you saw Rins Krozen in the 8 prior, so it didn't matter who qualified the car. Now, in other series, you can't do that, so it does matter. So sometimes you will have the slower driver qualify the car and start the race because you're using strategy or having a slower stint, or you're putting the slower driver in when the field's more compact and the times are going to be slower. But that's not a factor here at RCI, especially in this Friday Endurance Champ where you can change the driver post qualifying. So there's no reason why you wouldn't have the fast drivers. So I would love to sit down with Robin and Rins and have a conversation on who the faster driver is.
well, I'm pretty sure that if you wander down the pit lane or the paddock afterward, they'll be waiting for you, Jesse. I'll stay here with the warm mug of tea, but
They're
I'll
definitely
get.
going to be waiting for me, but not in a fashion I'm accustomed to.
Yeah, I mean, maybe take this umbrella out. It might give you some
Oh
protection,
dear, I'm going to
and
need a
not from the rain.
bodyguard. Rins, of course, very poking fun at me there and all that. Rins, of course, with Minnow, both the Crozens in this series. Rins, since you're in chat, I'm just going to ask him to do an impromptu interview. Do you and Minnow ever have a discussion on who's better on any given weekend? Because obviously you two compete against each other at a very high level every single week. Do you talk about it?
There you go. We'll have to wait for that reply to come through. I know it's. We've got a couple of brothers who race like that. I know the
Do
Ryan
indeed.
Meenans. I think they do actually. I've seen them talking in chat before to each other about races that they've both been in.
Yeah, the Ryan Meenans, of course, they exploded onto the scene in Night Owl season 1, I think it was, season 1 or 2, where we were at Hungaroring for the opening round, and we didn't have live stewarding at the time, but I reckon they'd have had a struggle with it because they were beating 7 bells out of each other, but they weren't affecting anybody else's race, but they were taken out of each other in the middle of that pack, and right then we knew a star was born. They raced each other hard. They've continued to do that in RCI competition. And I mean, they're not the only pair, of course. We got the McCall family as well. That was a part of this championship and has been a part of RCI for a while now with their patented 44 contact. Tommaso Strappa goes around Chris Melbourne with the spin. Melbourne didn't mean to do that. He's going to give the position back, but an ugly moment here. Oh, just a punt. He sets him back the right way, but I don't know if he'll appreciate that because that's more damage.
Yeah, just let off the brakes. Did Chris Melbourne in the Bentley, obviously just trying to get that little bit closer, which we've seen him do corner after corner. And the 185, I think, has decided that the 70 is a little bit too scary now to be behind us. Just let him go. But we saw Chris Melbourne do that numerous times. He wanted to be as close as he could to get the pass done in these tricky conditions, and just a little bit too close that time.
Well, you hate to take that extra damage if you're Strappa, but it's one of those things. The intentions was meaning well. Don't spin. I'll set you back the right way and get going. But damage there, misjudged well, it wasn't even an overtaking maneuver. They were nose to tail, but bit unfortunate nonetheless. But they continue. Conversation happening in our chat right now about the weather conditions definitely changing. Rins was mentioning, as I go back to the chat, that Rins says, I was driving a bit faster than Robin, but now I don't know. The conditions have changed. And Uri Svinchek, who's fresh out of the car, the 107, says conditions have changed for sure. The line has less water. So that explains that. And of course, Rins also mentioning that him and Minnow are very chill. They don't usually they race on the same track as each other all the time, but they don't actually race each other a lot. And I have noticed that, Rince, that you two are usually separated. And I can't think of one specific time where the two of you actually had a head to head on the racetrack. That must make family dinners a little bit easier.
I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure that if I had a sibling who I raced with, it would be I'm too competitive in that sense. It would definitely be interesting. I'll say that. Speaking of track conditions as well, as we see the 107 give plenty of room. That's Slizik there, getting well out of the way of the 404 of Roche. But you can see that last lap time, we're down into the 132s, and this is, still with a good chunk of fuel left. 30 minutes just ticked over onto. So yeah, the line is drying out. The cars are getting faster and faster. So far, the best lap for this car, in particular the 404, was a 31.6.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to mention. Qualifying was a very quick time. It was a 31. So we're not too far off where we were qualifying. We've had confirmation by two of the drivers out of their first stint, mentioning the track's in a lot better condition now. And we can see that visually now with just how the track looks. And I know as we're broadcasters now, but as drivers too, we can kind of get an idea of what the grip is just by seeing how they're driving. We're going to ride on board. This is Peter Roche, the leader of the race for Connection Lost. We're going to see him go down into the chicane here over the curbs. Yeah, it seems nice, controlled. There's nothing too crazy, nothing crazy at all going on here. And this is what the driver sees. The driver knows where the water is, the standing water, and they know where it's not at this point. Yeah, the conditions here have certainly improved. The weather's not changed. It's just the cars going around the track have dissipated the water on the racing line so much that it's got more grip, and it's a lot more of a raceable surface. It is cooling off, by the way, in the afternoon, nearly 4 p.m. in sim time, and we started at 27 degrees. It's now 25, so cooling off a little bit in the evening.
Yeah, with all the cars going around, and 25 for a rain race is still, it's got some good temperature in the track. So yeah, once the cars have dissipated the standing water, it will, want to try and dry up. It's just now being wetted by the light sprinkling that we've got. You can see on the windscreen, and yeah, cars. The body language of these drivers really, they're taking curbs now, and before, right at the start of the race, the cars were really, really snappy, and you could see that in the driving, people fighting their cars. Whereas now, Mercedes, which is arguably one of the cars that you do have to kind of manhandle around here, it's quite a strange car to drive, is the Mercedes, at least personally. Making it look quite easy really is the 404. I'm pretty sure that it is very much not to do some of these lap times around here, lap after lap, but yeah, making it look easy in the red flying machine.
Would you like a statistic?
We have got, is this like an offshoot of the Jesse Lee maps? We've now got the Jesse Lee
It
statistics.
is. It's Jesse Lee covers a lot of races here at RCI, so he keeps a notebook of statistics. Yes.
Ah.
There has never been a race, an RCI race at Donington, where a Mercedes was in the race and did not spin into the S's or leaving the S's. I'm not picky. It has never happened. There have been races here that didn't have Mercedes in them, of course. Those don't count. But any race where there were Mercedes taking part, there's always been at least one that has spun in the S's. And you may wonder, Jesse Lee, why do you have that stat? Because I have a theory that this car doesn't work at this racetrack due to the curbs. But we have not seen the 404, who's the only AMG here. We have not seen this 404 put a foot wrong all day. And I don't think we are going to see that. I think we're going to see history broken here.
I think with what happens with the spin for the S's anyway is, and it can catch quite a few cars out depending on your setup. If you want to run more curb as you come down into the left just before the old hairpin, There's actually quite a drop off there, and if you bottom the car out or you have so stiff suspension that it doesn't allow the car to move and, to flow with the circuit, you can very easily then completely lose grip and be pointing left, or sometimes they just grab the splitter. I've noticed a couple of cars, if you run them too soft, it'll scrape the floor, grab the splitter, and do the exact same thing. So it's a fine balancing act, is Donington. One think it'd be such a difficult track to do a setup on. You look at the track map and you look at the track as an overview, you think it's pretty simple, where you compared to your maybe your Spa with some of the, big elevation changes up Eau Rouge Radion or Kyalami with all of the, the high speed flowing corners. But Donington, I found, was one of my hardest tracks to actually do a setup on when I raced here.
Yeah, I don't doubt that. It's because my theory is it's because it throws so many different corners at you and there's so much undulation, elevation change, and if you set your car up to go really well through the chicane and the flat corners, the hairpins, you're not going to go well through old hairpin or the like. So it's a trade-off. You have to be very sure about what sort of corners you want to be able to nail more than others, because if you set it up for one end of the track, you're going to clearly make it pretty terrible for the other end of the track. And I think it's a balancing act you have to do, and no car out here looks as balanced as Peter Roche and the Connection Lost Racing team. But if you like a little bit of drama, I'll give you a little bit of drama. Robin Baugh is slowly closing in on your race leader.
Very, very slowly. Like you said, the lasts for both of these drivers are incredibly close. So the last for Peter Roche, he's just crossed the line now. That's a 32.9. Now let's see what the number 8 does when they cross the timing beam. Obviously, a little bit of a way back, and they were a 32.6. So yeah, as you says, a couple of attempts here and there, they're clawing it back ever so slowly.
By the way, I can no longer talk about the Connection Lost Racing AMG. The team principal for Connection Lost has told me to can it, so I will, out of respect for Mr. Bart Macha. And he also says that the setup here for the wet in that car is apparently really good for them, and certainly does look like that. Well, you can tell it's near the end of a championship, and you can tell it's the end of a very long season when our broadcaster camera operator Stewie starts taking an adventure on the circuit, and that's exactly what we have done. We put out the drone camera and we're flying around the Donington circuit. And once again, while we have a few moments, a big thank you to all the competitors that have signed up and saw this championship out. It's been a rough one, to be fair. These 2-hour races, there's been a lot of drama this season with the drivers, the teams, and there's going to be some missing wins. I think you could say that for any championship, but there's certainly a couple of races for me that turned out way different than I thought they would. Case in point, today we've got an AMG leading in the wet, and for a couple of teams, though, it's going to be relief that they've made it this far. And well, for two teams, the 185 and the 141, it's going to be a celebration, as they're going to end up being champions on the day. And Robin Baugh, by the way, for Danglin Wang Racing, continues to claw into that lead. I'm going to do some maths in a minute to see if he can catch him. I think he might be possible if he keeps up this pace. But oh my goodness, it's been an interesting season. It's a season that I'm glad it came to an end today, because if it went on any longer, it would start to be a bit of a drag. These 8-week seasons are very long for these teams. It's a long commitment, 2 months.
8-week season with 2-hour races every day as well. It is a big commitment. It's also a lot of planning. Setups, two people, or you've got to get the setup right for both of you. You've got to choose the car, learn it. Track conditions. It all is such a big commitment. So to anyone who's made it all the way through, no matter what position you've come, it's a round of applause at the end of it. I like as well how earlier we had the drone cam going around looking at the steward, the marshals even. Marshals obviously what make really the racing go round as much as they're the orange guys who people complain at, when they bring out the yellow flags or red or the red flags or anything, they do make it work. And sadly, at this track in particular, I know the marshals really well, not because we're friends or anything, or because I've talked to them in the pits, because this particular track is where on a track day I burst into flames. And it was coming around turn one where my car caught fire, around about where Robin Bart is now. And I was notified of the fact around about here by an MG that came storming up behind me, and I had to ditch it into the gravel at Old Hairpin. And it confirmed to me that I was on fire when I saw a marshal running across that big gravel trap with a fire extinguisher already deployed. It was at that moment where I realized that, oh, right, we are actually on fire.
I've always been able to determine how bad a crash is or what the stakes are by what a marshal does whenever the car stops. If the marshal is walking to you with a fire extinguisher in one hand, probably not that bad. If he's running at you with a fire extinguisher waving in his hand, that's probably pretty bad. And you know the car is very much on fire whenever it's primed and ready, and he's got two hands on it running towards you. That's the difference. You can gauge as a driver how serious what has just happened to you is by how the marshals react. The marshals, they see everything. You know what I'm saying? Like they're volunteers mostly, but they've seen more crashes than you've likely experienced yourself. So they'll tell you first how bad the crash was or how serious it is, and you kind of get a judge for their body language, don't you?
Yeah, and that, like I said, that was what that was what got me, is when it was Marshall running full sprint across the bottom of the gravel trap, which running on sand is and gravel is not exactly a thing you really want to be doing. It's not great for your stability. With the fire extinguisher, yeah, fully deployed, like almost aiming at my car. It was at that moment it's like, oh wow, no, we are very much on fire. I can't see the fire because it's in the engine bay, but it must be pretty bad. And yeah, when we threw the bonnet up, the whole engine bay was engulfed in flames. And yeah, it was some crispy paintwork that day. And but good news for anyone who is listening: that car still lived. I rebuilt it, and it does still drive around. It's still got a massive burn mark on the bonnet, though. However, I haven't repainted that yet.
Oh, I think that's. I can't tell if that's Svinchek or the other silver car. That is Svinchek getting out of the way of the third place car, Heath. And Kirk Heath will appreciate that as Svinchek has had an adventurous day. Or excuse me, Svinchek's out of the car. That's Dusan Slizik, I should say, in the 107 now. Svinchek is in chat. So Slizik in that car, and that car has had an adventurous day, and that day continues there as they run ever so wide. But blue flags, not a pull over and stop and get out of the way flag, but very respectful driving out of the 107 there. But yeah, you get these marshals who literally are indispensable. You have to have them to put on an event safely, and they're more than just flag bearers. They're the first ones there. They're first responders, aren't they, when things go wrong as well? So if we happen to have any of the marshals from anywhere in the world in chat, thank you for doing what you do so that racers can do what they do. And I found also, Moss, and I'm pretty sure you're similar. They're one and the same. You may be a marshal on a Saturday, but maybe you race on a Friday yourself.
Oh yeah, it's numerous times that we've seen that. I've been talking in the pits with some of the marshals who are wandering around at the track day, and they mention how how they've been racing and such. We've got a bit of a race replay. This is the 107. Dusan Slizik
He's
again
on.
having another adventure. You wanted to try copy me, but if Dusan, I need to recommend you need to go deeper into the gravel trap if you need to abandon. It's to the left. That's where the best point is to get off, I find.
Paolo in chat's asking, at the end of the race, will we interview both of the championship winners? We will do if they want to be interviewed. We don't require them to be interviewed, but just like most things, they are allowed to queue up, and we'll talk to them post-race. We would love to have them for a post-race interview, but going back to Slizik, that car looked odd for the last couple of laps. I think they're struggling with a little bit of traction for Slizik's car. Maybe Svinchek can shed some light on that as he's in chat. Rentz earlier, I just want to double back to something Rentz said. Minnow and Rentz are basically the same pace, but they drive way different cars. I hope one day to see that epic side by side between the two Crozens at some point. That would be absolutely brilliant to see.
I'm sure it will happen at some point. You know, you see some drivers just manage to get better and better, and sometimes, you know, the circumstances will put you in that position. Speaking of circumstances that will put people in positions, even with 16 minutes to go, we've still got a few penalties on the board.
Gonna watch the replay. This is Dorian Geisler trying to get through, and contact there. Speaking of, lights flashing, not happy with that particular maneuver. Dorian Geisler getting spun there. Who was that? Sizek. It had to have been Sizek in the 501 coming through. But you are correct. Speaking of penalties, of course, earlier, remember when the 271 made contact with the 627? Well, the 271 was given a 15-second penalty for taking them out. We did not report that at the time because they left the race. This is a replay of that. The 271 got the 15-second penalty for that. They called that just a takeout. I would call that avoidable contact with a spin. So 15 seconds for that. A 5-second penalty for the 70 for taking out the 185. But that position was given back. We saw that quite a bit earlier as well. An additional warning for car 70 for avoidable contact with that 185. A 15-second penalty for car 501 for taking out the 837. That's more recent. And of course, a warning for car 501 for dive bombing the 837.
There you go. That's some of the last few. But yeah, it'll be an interesting game to watch now as well, because the 501, if Chris Melbourne keeps this pace up, he might lose it to Chris Melbourne. So Chris Melbourne might go up to 5th, Sizek down to 6th. But if Stropper can somehow get some of the early race pace that we saw out of that car back on, you know, he might be in with a shout.
Might be. I was doing the math on Ba and Roche. It's not coming down quick enough. My current maths, as I am known to do, he'll get within just about 4, maybe 5 seconds of Roche at this pace, but that's nowhere near close enough. And he's going to have to get a move on. The thing with Ba is sometimes Ba will gap him by 0.4 of a second in one sector and not make up any more. If he gapped him by 1/10.5 to 0.2 a sector, he would absolutely get there, but he's not quite making that pace at the moment. And by the way, we haven't talked about our pro championship leader and looking like champion elect here. This is Ala Pitchik. This is the Ballas Esports Ukraine team. And of course, Pitchik is one half of that duo that has been so potent and so strong this season in that very purple Bentley. I don't think anybody at the beginning of this one would have called the Ballas Esports Ukraine team to be the dominant one, but they certainly have. They've lit up the stat sheet, and even when they've had a less than perfect race, it's still gone their way by sheer perseverance and pace. This team has just been about as good as you could have ever expected, and very deserving of championship moniker here, as they're third in their class. They're looking for third overall. That, of course, very green and blue 100. That is the high silver leaders. And I'm very curious. We've seen the 100 go off a few times here. Be curious maybe if that 100 is starting to ail just a little bit here in the late going. One other thing I mentioned, wonder if the 107 doesn't have grip. Turns out that's not grip. According to teammate Svinchek, it's his girlfriend distracting him. Got some news for Slizik. Just get her own sim rig. She'll stop annoying you.
Yeah, but then your problem, the problem is when you race your better half and they end up better than you, then you know that it's gone a bit Pete Tong wrong.
Oh dear. Yeah, that can backfire on you, can it? You get your better half. They're called the better half for a reason, right, Ryan? So you get them a sim rig, and all of a sudden they're competing against you. You're like, no, that's not what I wanted you to do. I want you to do something else.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted the ideology of you to do it, not actually do it.
Just don't do it to me. Go
Yes.
beat everybody else. Just let me win.
Yeah, like go. If you're an AC driver, you need to get them to go play Gran Turismo Sport or something.
There it is.
Just get them away on the other side.
Oh dear, you would hate for something like that to turn into a rivalry, but I think it does a lot of times, especially with a lot of these. Sim racing is a family thing. How many times we talked about the Ryan Meenans, the McCalls, etc., and so forth, and the list goes on, the story goes on, and it's something that everybody can enjoy, everybody can do, and occasionally you'll have a lot of people in the same skill set as you, and it can form a bit of a rivalry. I've talked to some of the different drivers, and they go, "Yeah, I didn't really talk to my sibling after X, Y, and Z happened. I didn't really, this didn't feel like hearing their excuses, or oh, maybe I didn't want to talk to him because maybe I put him in a headlock otherwise." Listen, the thing about sim racing is, Ryan, if you and I go out there and race, right, and we have a rough race, we have words, we're separated by an ocean. You do that to your family, you're separated by a wall, maybe?
Yes. I think that's the one good thing of me about being an only child. But I don't have these kind of
Yes.
rivalries. I have me, myself, and I. But I'm sure I can battle myself. I'll work out a way. I will find a way to do it.
Trust me, the way I drive, I do battle myself every single corner. I can promise you that. But no, it's one of those things. It makes you better too. I think having a sibling or somebody with a same interest as you in your family. It doesn't matter. We've had dad and daughter pairs. We've had father and son pairs, and siblings, and all sorts of things. And I think it makes you better. It really does. If you have somebody that's that close to you that you do the same thing, and it's like having a free teammate in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. Just looking out the window as well. I don't know about you. That 100 as well doesn't quite look as planted as it did a few laps
Doesn't.
ago. Maybe the ooh, very, very close from the 141. I think that would have. I think the 100 might need a change of underwear. Looking in the rearview mirror and just seeing this almighty mass of a Bentley screaming towards you at great speed. 8 minutes of the race left, and Oliver Pitchick has decided to turn the wick up a little bit. He wants that podium, even if it is just for an overall.
Folks, it was close when it made Ryan and me make old man noises. We make the same noise. I've been told that by viewers before. You and I make the same noise. We go, ooh, we do the same thing. We're old, leave us alone. Well, Oliver Pitchick is not leaving Heath alone as this battle for third overall, and I think that's a very astute observation by Mawson there. That 100 just looks a little bit wayward off of some of these turns.
Just a little bit. I mean, the lower fuel that the Porsche gets, the more and more sketchy it becomes. It's probably one of the most dynamic cars for fuel load. The difference between that car on an absolutely full tank and fresh tires versus some worn out tires and no fuel in the tank is, a very different beast. You almost have to practice sort of three cars, the Porsche on full fuel, you have to practice the Porsche with no fuel, and Porsche somewhere in the middle with worn out tires, and then you kind of know vaguely how it drives.
Yeah, you're fighting a war here, and luckily you've only got 7 more minutes to defend. If you're Heath, just got to keep doing what you're doing. A little bit wide and wayward was Pitchick that time down into that corner. That allowed Heath to get away a little bit. That is a breath of fresh air, a sigh of relief for him as we enter the waning moments of this season and of this championship. As a reminder, the upcoming Friday Sprint Championship returns. No endurance racing this Friday season. It is sprint racing, and those signups will go live on Monday. And the Thursday GT4 Championship signups are already open and are accepting new registers of any skill group that you find yourself in. To go sign up, they'll put you in a skill category. I'm being told that there is room to spare. So, GT4 racing, been covering it myself for this year, and I gotta tell you, it's some of the most interesting racing because the cars, they have less power, but they're just so fun to watch race each other. I'm talking 3 and 4 wide, and on one occasion 5 wide. Nearly lost my voice. I was screaming at the top of my lungs. They went 5 wide and they all made it. And that's just a product of GT4 racing. It's incredible stuff. Sign up for some GT4 action. That season starting soon as well. I don't have any information about the Monday Championship, but I assume that those signups are open now or will be very soon as well.
That was pretty much that. I hope you can join us for that. It should be a. I don't know what do you prefer, Jesse, the sprints or the enduros? The sprints for me do. The obviously endurance is watch people about what they do for their strategy and the car choices. You know, it plays a big factor. Sprints though sometimes are just bring out the people who can absolutely throw these cars to the wall, and you know, you watch them thinking, how can you drive that car on such a knife edge? You know, like it could be a cooking knife with how sharp they have them set up.
I'm going to have to agree with you. I love a nice sprint race. I enjoyed the 30-minute sprint races in GT4. Of course, the new GT4 season is not going to be 30-minute sprint races. They're going to be longer races, but the 1-hour races, I think, is a nice sweet spot for just GT racing in general. You kind of get like the sprint vibe from that, but it's also a bit of a longer race, so there's some management, right, that comes into play. You got to manage your tires, and some cars might even have to manage their fuel just a little bit, as once more we see Kirk Heath get a little bit sideways out of the hairpin. But I will say an hour race for me is just about the perfect length. I'll tell you something else that I discovered this year that I really like. I love no qualifying reverse grid based on points. You take the championship leader, you put them at the back of the grid, and you let them see how far they can get up towards the front. In my opinion, that is the mark of a champion. If you can race in a championship like that, where if you are the one that has the most points and you keep getting put at the back of the field and you keep scoring enough points to stay out in front, that to me is an ultimate champion.
Yeah, absolutely, and it will really shake it up, and that's also partly what I said earlier why I like the rain races. Some of the super fast guys might not be the fastest in the rain, so you know you spatter in some different weather conditions. You have a rain race here, a super hot race, or even sometimes I've had a couple of people who struggled in the extreme cold, where part of the strategy is keeping heat in the tires. You know, I've seen drivers struggle with that. It's always a bit interesting to see what they can do. We have a local waved yellow just coming down through out of Old Hairpin. That's the 197 as well. That's the Kroll Bentley. And probably not their day, but like we said at Hungaro Ring, if there's a spirit of the race, well, they're still going. You will finish, and you will still finish 4th in silver.
Yeah, I got to say the 197 for me is, we've not talked about Kroll, we've not talked about that Bentley team much in the goings today, but you know, it's one of those days, especially with weather, you're going to have tracks that don't suit you, you're going to have races where you're just sort of out of it, but to keep going, that is the most important thing, picking up some positions. And oh my goodness, a Porsche is off there. Was that Scheckerman in the 95? It is Brian Scheckerman. What happened to Brian Scheckerman in Old Hairpin? Just missed it.
Hits the corner, gets on the grass, and then there's pretty much, you can see there's just no grip. No matter what Scheckerman wanted to do, the car was already deciding the route there. Gets it back on the road. Continues round. 2 more minutes just about to survive.
As always, a big thank you to our stewards. A big thank you to all of you at home that stood with us this season. 8 races. It's a long old season, and we appreciate your viewership. And we invite you to like, subscribe, hit the bell one more time for more GT racing content. You know, we're going to be back at it here soon with more championships opening up. And Ryan Mawson and myself, Stewie, will be back with you in the future as well. And our stewards in tow, keeping things all together. And I got to say, they kind of had it sort of easy today. Only a handful of penalties necessary in the smaller grid at the end of the championship. So a well-needed couple of hours for them where they were not slammed wall to wall with penalties. But Ryan Mawson, excellent to share the booth with you. And maybe we'll both be back next Friday, do it full time.
I was going to say, I think, is it the term that I'm looking for is same time next week, I think.
There it
So,
is.
but,
I can't wait.
oh, God. Well, by the way, we got 45 seconds left, and looking
Hit
at
myself for
where
this
is
year.
our leader. He is just coming into the Melbourne Loop, so they will get one last go around for the 141 for Ole Pitchik. He's been staring at the back of this green Porsche. He's seen it sort of wayward this way, that way. If he's going to make a move, it's going to have to be either now or never, and it might end up just being the never. Heath has done a fantastic job of managing to keep this Bentley behind. At the pace, I thought that the 141 was going to catch up and just breeze by, but it was not to be. Definitely not an easy position.
Well, I think it's risk versus reward. Neither one of these get rewarded with anything by beating each other, Heath or Pitchik. So Pitchik's still going to get third in pro, and Heath is still going to win in silver. But this is the man, the myth, the legend. Martin Lawrence was in the car early, qualified the car on pole, never looked back, and had a massive lead. Peter Roche getting in the connection lost AMG, and still, even with the gap coming down, the gap was too big. And Peter Roche is going to be the one that comes across the line, gets this win. They're going to lead flag to flag. An excellent dominating display by a car that we didn't expect to see it from. And remember, back in practice, I was saying, what is going on with Martin Lawrence? What is going on with that team? That team should not be 9th place, and they put it on pole, and they never looked back. I didn't expect him to be on pole, but I didn't expect him to be 9th either. But an excellent response and just a brilliant race to a team that has had just the most frustrating season.
Yeah, they were hiding their true pace. Perhaps they knew that. Perhaps they knew that in practice this setup was, incredible for their team and that car. And yeah, they didn't want to give it away that that car was one to watch, or didn't want any sort of early race being attacked. It will be the 404, the Mercedes, the unlikely winner here. And you can cross out your statistic, Jesse. This car did not spin all the way through this entire race.
Robin Baugh's going to come across the line. He's celebrating the end of the season and the 2nd place. It's going to be 2nd place for Robin Baugh and Dang Lin Wang as well. Kirk Heath is going to just lead him to the line. Kirk Heath is going to win for turn 1 in high silver. Ala Pitchik will be 3rd in pro in the 141. Ala Pitchik and the entire Balas Esports Ukraine team have done it. They are RCI Friday Enduro champions.
And as everyone comes back across the line, Chris Melbourne now just about coming into it in 6th, crosses it. And for the 185 as well, Stropper, they knew what they needed to do and pretty much executed it. There was no sort of funny business. Nothing exciting happened, and they take the silver championship as well.
It was a brilliant day for 185. They weren't always in a podium spot, mind you, but they fought back and they persevered. And Tommaso Strappa in the 185 will get that win in high silver, a well-deserved one for the championship. And of course, Brian Scheckerman in the 95 will end up finishing in the 3rd place in that class as well. Results being confirmed, the final tally is as follows. on the screen. All results unofficial until post-race stewarding is done with, as we're hoping to get some interviews with our winners.
But what a season it's been so far, and what a race to round it all off at the end. Donington is one of those tracks in it where it tests a driver, and so does the wet. But even if we didn't think it was going to be a particularly action-packed race, we still had plenty to talk about. And watching some of these teams managing to wrestle the cars around in the wet for 2 whole hours. Hats off to everyone that finished this race.
Well, we are trying to get our championship winners inside the box here. And in the interim, just a last minute reminder, join the Discord RCI. Get involved with some of the racing. We've got many signups open now. The Friday Championship sign up opening up on Monday as we're going to go to some race highlights while we wait here. And what a season, like Mawson said, it started out. I had an idea of who the championship competitors would be, and turned out we were in for a treat, as season two has been pretty darn crazy to say the least. And we have our high silver winners. Well, ladies and gentlemen, they've done it. The 185 team, the Balasso Squadra Corsa team. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, tell us about your season. It was long. 8 races, 2 hours, and you guys didn't lead flag to flag in every race. You were in the wars. There were several times where you had to climb up into podium positions. How did you outlast all the other high silver teams?
Well, I think that season was quite tough. We definitely did not expect to finish in the first position. We did not expect even to be in the top 3 or top 5. But after the autumn race, something has changed in our driving. And we started to put consistent results and wins, podiums, and so on. So we had a lot of podiums, and yeah, that put us that have put us on the first place at the table. I think we are pretty happy with that. Still cannot believe it. Yeah.
Of course, we're talking with Dominic Koroshavin and Ala Pitchik, your high silver champions of Friday Enduro Season 2. Pitchik, I've just got to say, some fantastic driving by the both of you out there. What was the strategy like? Because eventually somebody had to qualify the car, and I think both of you did at some point in the season. How did you come up with that?
We use the practice races, the practice server to estimate our best possible lap times, and then decided who will qualify and go for the first stint. Sometimes it was me, sometimes it was Dominique, but at the end of the season, mostly Dominique qualifies and made the first stint in our team. And at the beginning of the champion, there are a lot of competitive teams, but at the end, not so many of them decided to finish this champion till the last round. But overall, we have every race we have some good fights. We have Melbourne and Sites team Bentley number 70, and it was enjoyment and entertainment to fight with them for the championship.
Well, there you have it. And I just got to say one more time, congratulations. And above all, I mean, my next question, my final question is before I turn you over to my partner, are you coming back again for next season?
Yes, have to defend our championship next season, so definitely we will have to come.
Well, there you have it.
Yeah, so one from me. With what was your race like strategy wise? We saw for at one point the 627, the Mikowski car, the McLaren that had, started at the back. They raced up to you, and we thought that it might be a battle. Two pro teams. You didn't have to let them by, but we saw you just easily let them by, and we theorized that that was. You just didn't want any funny business. You knew that all you had to do today was finish to hear it. Was it that, or was it just you knew that the 671 was or 627 was on an absolute charge?
Yeah, you're right. Our point was just to finish the race ahead of 70 car, so we did not put any battles or so. So I think that was no necessary to fight to lose some time and so on. So yeah, you're right. We just let them pass. They were faster than us, like seconds or so, because like McLaren are pretty fast in the rain. But there was no point just to fight them. Let them.
And at the end of the race, we have a good fight with the Porsche for the last podium place. But Dominic holds me and asked me not to push hard, to be careful, and not to do any contacts. And I just can't overtook this Porsche guy for the podium place.
Well, guys, I just want to read out some stats. 6 podiums out of 8 rounds, 2 wins for you guys. Is there anything on your season that you would have changed, or was it just about how you drew it up? And if you could change something, what would it be?
I think we have to work on the qualifications because we have 0 pole positions at this seasons. So I think that is pretty important, especially with the starts from the Bentley. So yeah, for the next season, I think we will work on that.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce for the first time, probably not for the last time, your RCI Friday Enduro Champions, Team Ballas Ukraine, the 141 Bentley Championship winners. Congratulations, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
And also, I would like to say thank you to you guys for a great work, for great streaming and commentary during all the season.
Absolutely our pleasure. Ala Pitchik, Dominic Korshaven, your champions. Well. There's your champions of the season. Well, what about the champions of Donington? We've got Peter Roche with us down here. And, well, I have to say, we didn't expect that, Peter.
Me neither. Not at all, because, well, my first time in ages in ICC, really, because the first time in the cars in Tex Cup. And, well, I was hoping to do quite a good job for Martin. Quite good. You, Martin, preferred dry, right? Or wet day?
I'm not exactly sure because I was expecting me being faster on the dry because I was mainly setting up car for once on dry, but this turned out to be really perfect stuff for the AMG, for the old AMG. Yeah, I enjoy it.
Also really happy with the rain, because I practice on dry, because it's my first time in over a year maybe with the AMG, so it was basically learning from zero. In dry it felt kind of weird, a lot of oversteer, but that's everything fine. Knew I could keep it on the roads, and yeah, fine. All
Well,
we needed for the win. Martin did a phenomenal job with the pole position. mind-blowing. We did it.
Well, Martin Lawrence, I just got to ask really quickly. 0 podiums, 0 pole positions, no wins, nothing on the season. The only one that you guys had was that sign out that you had to have. But you come through. You put a 1 in every column in the final week. Well done.
Yeah, I'm really extremely happy for that. I'm the one thing I'm sad about, it's Bart that is not attending today with me, but Peter did a mega job because I wasn't expecting him to be that fast because AMG after such a long time, last AMG driving was some really terrible season that we quit because the car was undrivable. Uh, and yeah, he did a perfect job, and I'm really happy for that. Basically triple. Yeah, today. Yeah, today was a good day. I'm happy with that.
Well, I ask every team that comes in here. Well, you're the winners. You ended the season with a win. Are you coming back to the sort of the sprint championship in the next season?
Yeah, I will be there. Hope, think if my wheel just don't break up, because yeah, well, it's an oldie. But yeah, I think I will be. We'll see.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, they won the race today. Put a 1 in every column. Martin Lawrence, Peter Roche, Connection Loss
Woohoo!
Racing.
Okay, thanks, boys.
You.
See ya.
Well, of course, we're doing the hat dance down here in racing. It's called the hat dance because you got to make all the sponsors happy. Well, for us, it's moving all the personnel around. And we talked to the pro winners, we talked to the winners of the race. Now it's time to talk to the high silver champions. And gentlemen, what a season it was for you. Highs and lows everywhere. But in the end, Balasso Squadra Corsa, your champions in high silver. Congrats, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Firstly, we would like to thank you, thank the community RCI, because you are doing a great job, guys, with the broadcasting team, the stewards, everything that you do is because you are passionate too. So it's amazing to have won a championship like this one. And yeah, a lot of high and lows, and we had a great first part of the season. We won a crazy race in Bathurst after a crazy pole position, and it was a crazy championship.
Well, it sure was. And I'm just reading back your stats to you. I want to know how you feel about how you did. 7 podiums, 2 wins, 3 pole positions. You nearly podiumed every single race this season. Hard to do better than that, I would think. Yeah.
Yeah, actually at the beginning of this championship, we didn't know what to expect from those 8 races. Also because the level of the other teams and the other pilots was very high, and yeah, we managed to got 7 podiums, and I think that the final result is way beyond the expectation.
Well, I'm going to throw you to my partner here who's going to ask you a question or two himself. But you came into the last race. You didn't need a whole lot, but you still were able to get back to a podium position. Talk me through your last race here today.
Yes, it was quite hard because with the rain, we had to change plans last minute. Danilo had the qualifying. I usually had it, but it was very, very fast. It was faster. It was faster than me on qualifying on fast lap, and he had a great first stint. He overtook the 70 car, and then when I got into the car, I had a slower pace, and 70 got me. We had unfortunate contact, but we are very happy for the second place. 100 was the Carol 100 was very fast, very fast today, and we had we have to be happy for the second position.
Excellent. I'm just going to ask you one more. Do you think that you're pro caliber now that you have won this champ? Like I said, 7 out of 8 races you were on the podium. Are you thinking about maybe moving up to pro, or are you comfortable in high silver still?
Well, I think that maybe we are not ready for this step, also because we have not much experience, and this was the first our first big championship, and I think that we should wait before compete in higher levels.
Ryan Mawson, do you have anything for our champions?
Well, I asked the other team this as well, and I'll ask you. For your race today, we did notice as well after the after the unfortunate contact, there were a lot of times where you possibly could have gone for for a battle, but didn't. Was it just towards the end, knowing that you don't have to go for every single position, and you just were driving it to the flag towards the end?
Yes, it was a very unfortunate contact. I had the same trouble in Silverstone, where we had uh, we're secure of the of winning the race, but then for trying to get a pro car, I tried the overtake, and then we got a penalty, and that was really a bad move from my side. And this is what I wanted to do today. We tried to have fun because there were the last 30 minutes of the championship, so we tried to have fun, but it didn't went well. But we are happy anyway for the great win and for the great effort that we gave in this great championship.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to announce your RCI Endurance Champions Season 2, but in high silver. Danilo Rossi and Tommaso Strappa in the 185. Good job, guys. Congratulations. And made Balasso Squadra Corsa proud in that 185 AMG of all things. Congratulations on your new championship.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and thank you again for the live broadcasting.
Yes,
You were mega.
thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys.
It is an absolute pleasure. Well, that does it. The hardware handed out on another season, Ryan Mawson.
Yeah, and what a season it is to be. And, just with some of the names that will be coming back, it's just even more, to look forward to in this Spring Cup where they won't be racing in the same cars. So now, like you said, you might see a bit of competition, people who were teammates now racing against each other.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what the Friday Championship looks like whenever the races are at half the length they were this season. Just one final reminder, signups are open for several championships and will continue to open up for some others. No Night Owl broadcast this week, but we might have something special for you for the Night Owl season finale in 2 weeks. Other than that, there is no racing here at RCI being broadcast over the next few weeks. We'll be back with you in 13 days on Thursday for the start of the GT4 Championship. Signups for that are very much open and accepting all members. So get involved with that. We would love to have you on some GT4 action. I'd love to see you out there on the track. And well, once again, a big thank you to you, Ryan Mawson, Stewie in the box, for your commentary and help this season. A big thank you to the stewards as well. And the biggest thanks, of course, to our partners that make this race and every race possible. Remember, you can get 25% off your driver coaching at driver61.com by using our discount code link in the description. Join the Discord, like, subscribe, all of that great stuff. On behalf of myself, I've been Jesse Lee, Ryan Mawson, Stewie, and this has been a presentation of RCI and the finale of the GT Endurance Championship. We look forward to seeing you next season. Until then, have a good weekend.
And we'll see you on the next Friday, champ.